It is the Wednesday edition of Three Man Front. Landrum Roberts, Conrad Van Order, Molly Robinson, Pat Smith. So overwhelmed with last night's college football playoff rankings. Another week of that. He was taken aback by some of the things that Ward Manuel said. Pat not with us today. He's back with us on Friday. Some much deserved R&R. I guess that you would say that. Right now, he's probably doing honeydews and stuff around his house and listening to us. So everyone say hi to Pat. And good morning, Pat.
Hey, Pat.
Morning. Hi, Pat.
Good morning, Pat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad when sometimes you got to take a day, but 2 days? It must have really hit him hard.
It did. We've got plenty of different angles, different roads that we can travel down with the college football playoff. But Conrad, I'm going to start with you. Any big surprises from what we saw from the committee last night?
I don't know about big surprises. I think a lot of it was, it could have gone one way or the other, and it was just interesting to see how the committee made their decisions. I think the two big takeaways, at least for me, were BYU and how far they fell after one loss, and you compare that to what happened with Miami a few weeks ago when they lost to Georgia Tech. They did not fall nearly as far as BYU did last night after their first loss of the season. So I thought that was interesting, and explaining some of the rationale. We'll get to hear from Ward Manuel and some of the stuff he had to say in a minute. And I think the other one was Alabama jumping Miami, where Miami had the open date last weekend. They were on bye, and Alabama beat up on a Mercer team that, while Alabama looked good, I mean, it's an FCS team. That's what you expect. And I think in that situation in particular, I think you can look back to earlier in the playoff rankings this year, where you had BYU and Indiana last week, who got moved up and rewarded for close wins over Michigan and Utah. A lot of people were scratching their heads of, well, why are we rewarding them for beating 500 opponents, when the reality was the committee had probably underranked them the week before, and they were overcompensating by rewarding them for those wins that weren't very impressive. I think similarly with Alabama, they maybe wanted to have Alabama a little higher a week ago, and now this gave them an opportunity to say, all right, this is a third straight game that Alabama's looked really impressive. Miami was off. Let's move them over a Miami team, even though there was nothing to discredit the Hurricanes.
While things can change, last night told me and reassured me that, number one, the committee is watching games. And some of these discussions and things that we've seen as college football fans with our eyes, that is not lost on this year's selection committee. And you got some folks with some good football minds, athletic minds that get it. I would argue that some of the committees made up in the past, not that they weren't fine people, but it was a little bit of a head scratcher.
You could have questioned maybe their credentials.
Yes. And why would this person and their input have an effect on the eventual field? Yes. We have with a 4 team. Now we have a 12 team. But the BYU, as you mentioned, BYU getting dropped back, that told me that the committee was impressed with what BYU had been doing to that point. They respected them. But it also said that your resume is paper thin, and we realize who you've beaten, how you've beaten them, and who you haven't played. Meanwhile, it reassures you as someone from the SEC or right now from the Big Ten, this committee still values where they believe the best football is being played. And while we can't see the strength of schedule, we can certainly see that they value Alabama, not only their quality wins, but their strength of schedule. They value a Georgia team. While they're not perfect, they value that win that they had over Tennessee. And then, of course, Ole Miss. And you see the pecking order. Again, that can change. But right now, as we predicted here on the show yesterday, if you're a Tennessee fan, right now you're looking on the outside looking in. Now, do they take the same approach next week if you have a Indiana team that goes to Ohio State and they lose a close game? How far do they drop? I'm of the opinion I don't think they drop out of the top 10. They might be at 10.
Yeah.
A close game. Now, getting blown out, I think that has to sway the opinion, because this committee, and it's also not lost what they hear, and they are not sequestered They are hearing the conversations. They're seeing the conversations that are going on, whether it's on ESPN, whether it's talk shows like this across the country, whether it's on podcasts, and there's a multitude of those breaking it down last night, instant reaction to the College Football Playoff Committee. That's not lost on this committee, but how do they view an Indiana team that if they go into the horseshoe and they lose by, let's say, 10 points, how far do they fall? I think that some people are saying, it's already baked in with the SEC and the Big Ten. I do believe, unless we get absolute chaos, I do believe that we're going to have 4 teams representing the SEC and 4 from the Big Ten.
I agree with that. I think that's where the numbers will ultimately end up. That doesn't mean there's not more teams maybe from the SEC that are deserving of a spot, but I think 4 will be the right number. And going back to Indiana for a second, what you were saying, I agree with you. I think if you have obviously if you win, then this is an irrelevant conversation, and the conversation then turns to Ohio State, who, let's be honest, their resume, you have the win over Penn State. I don't think they would fall out of the top 12, but they don't have the strongest resume either if they lose this game to Indiana. But I think a close loss for the Hoosiers, I think you're going to find yourself in. But if you do get blown out, it makes it interesting. I will say this, though. If we're treating Indiana like this, and we're looking at them as, okay, well, let's say you lose to Ohio State by double or 2 touchdowns, we're going to knock you out of the playoff. Why are we not treating Texas the same way? Because it would be a very similar situation, right? You would have a Texas team that doesn't have a defining win. You got blown out in the one game you played against good competition. They would have a very similar resume to Indiana. I understand the strength of schedule's better in the SEC, but okay, so Indiana's best win is a 6-5 Washington, whereas Texas is a 6-4 Vandy. We're really splitting hairs there. And so while, hopefully this will all play itself out, while we want to talk about Indiana and criticize them, and it seems like a lot of people are looking for opportunities to get rid of them if they lose to Ohio State, why are we not looking at Texas the same way, who's already had that blowout loss and they don't have another signature win? It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't, Conrad, but to intercept you here, and I started thinking about this, and I was thinking about it even more, guys, this morning, and it's brand awareness.
It is.
So with the holidays right here around the corner and we go shopping, if you go into a big box store and you're looking for a flat screen television and you find one that is really nice and it's a 4K and it's a Sony for, let's say, $899, but they have another one that is comparable in size. It also offers the 4K. It's $829, but it's a Tensor Fujitsu.
Yeah, you're going to buy the Sony one.
Galaxy. You're going to pay more because it's what you know and it's a trusted brand. I think with what we've seen from either Alabama not going to an SEC championship game and winning a national title, from Georgia losing in an SEC championship game but still going to the college football playoff. While Texas was not a part of that, it is the brand of the SEC and the proof and proving it in past playoffs, which should not impact this year's decision-making. But, folks, we got human beings, and they're sitting in a room, and are they going to go with a trusted brand or the brand that they feel better about putting their stamp of approval on, or the unknown and looking like a fool?
No, I think you're exactly right, because the thing with Texas, right, is you're assuming that if they get into a playoff, that they're good enough to probably win a couple games at the very least, right? That's what they're assuming because they have a lot of talent. They were highly ranked to start the season. They played in the college football playoff last year. A lot of those players are back. I understand all of that. It's just, again, if we were to do blind resume tests and you were to remove all the logos and just put up the data points, I think Texas would be, I'm not saying they'd be on the outside looking in right now, but I don't think they'd be number 3. And I think what the committee showed you last night with moving Alabama up to 7, in my opinion, personally, you can say I'm biased. I think the committee's telling you they think Alabama's the best team in the SEC, but they can't move them above Texas because Texas only has the one loss. And as we've seen, that matters a lot to them. So I just wanted to bring up the point that as much as people seem to be jockeying for, Indiana doesn't deserve it, and I think that's a fair argument, but if we're going to say that, then we also need to say that Texas doesn't deserve it because they have very similar resumes. Right
Michigan
now.
Athletics Director Ward Manuel, he is the committee chair. If you have not tuned in on a Tuesday night to listen to his explanations on why the committee voted the way that they did, here's Ward Manuel on why BYU fell so far after losing a close game this past weekend.
You're not leading, it is the answer. I mean, they had a close win against SMU. They had a great win against Kansas State, but then a close win over Utah, a close win over Oklahoma State. And then they had a tough loss against Kansas, at home. And it was just something the committee had been monitoring all along. Look, we give a lot of credit when teams win. And so we don't penalize teams for winning close or winning too big, in other words. But we do value wins, and so that's where we saw BYU. But given some of those games that they played and the close wins that they had, it just was an indicator that some of the teams that were below them in the rankings last week should move ahead of them, is how the committee assessed BYU.
So we're not going to punish teams for winning close games, but BYU, we are now punishing you because you lost and you have won a bunch of close games. That's what I just heard from the committee. And I don't disagree with where BYU is, but
also you have to look at who they lost to.
Oh yeah, a 3-6 Kansas team.
And it's hard to get that out of your mind as a team playing at home. And I know that it was a fishy line and should have paid attention to it. And I was headstrong. I was like, nope, BYU. They keep proving me right. Just keep on winning. But 3-6, that hurts. I think that they still drop, but if that's not a 3-6 Kansas team, I think we're probably having a little bit different discussion based on how far that they would drop.
Yeah, and the question that was asked wasn't part of the clip, but the question that the media member asked was, did BYU fall so far because they've lost, but they've been playing with fire all year, and now that they finally lost a game, you felt like, okay, let's go back and analyze some of those close games, and maybe that's not the type of performances that we want to see on a resume of a college football playoff team. So I just thought it was interesting that he throws in, well, they were ranked so high because we don't punish teams that win. As long as you win, we're going to reward you. But the second you lose one game, we're now going to go back to those wins and overanalyze them, and we're going to knock you points because you've won close. It's just another example of like they're contradicting themselves in the same statement about their assessment of a team. Granted, I think BYU is where they should be. It's just, can we not just come out and just be honest and say they're not as good as we thought they were?
Well, in some of these weekly rankings, though, you also have to keep in mind that where a team is ranked, and you kind of alluded to it, but they're serving as a placeholder. Committee knows in most cases you got 2 more games left, and then there's a conference championship game, and you're going to see potentially an SMU taking on if we want to throw out Miami or whoever that would be playing and going head to head, and that will be decided. So it's a safe bet right now to keep a Miami team squarely there at 8 with a 9-1 record. Do we believe that Miami is a complete team? No. You can make the argument that Miami doesn't deserve to be there. But I think with where they are, Alabama jumping Miami, if Miami is to lose in a conference championship game, I think Miami gets left out.
Yes, I do agree with that. I think they are sending that message loud and clear that it's Miami, SMU, winner take all, essentially, or whoever ends up in the conference championship game. And I think that's they very clearly sent that message with the Big 12 of there's no hope of 2 teams from the Big 12 getting in there. And I think, a scenario we can talk about later that's even more interesting, and we've kind of mentioned it briefly, is the Big 12 getting left out altogether. And I don't think that's likely, but they're, again, just like it was possible for LSU to somehow find themselves in Atlanta playing for an SEC title, there is a path that leaves the Big 12 out of the playoff completely.
Well, and this is a reason why we have automatic qualifiers. And teams like Miami and SMU, they should certainly be thankful for that. And I'm not taking anything away from either what Mario Cristobal has done or what Rhett Lashley has done at SMU. I'm not. But if we were going strictly by eye test and there were no more automatic qualifiers, those teams would have no shot. Not in this field. No, Tennessee is absolutely going to get in.
Oh, I think right now, if you were to just ask most college football fans, just power rank the teams, don't worry about seeding, don't worry about anything, just power rank the teams. You would have Oregon, Ohio State, and then you would have 4 or 5 SEC teams in a row in Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas. I think that would be your top 7, honestly. But that's not how it works. There's a lot of teams that are deserving, but there's not enough room for all of them.
We do have a big show planned for you today. Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider, he's going to be joining us at 10:45, his normal time. He's going to give us some odds, not only on the college football weekend, but also who he likes out of the NFL. Voice of the Tide, Chris Stewart. We will talk to him. We'll talk a little bit about last night's rankings, but also the trip coming up, Norman, and then you got the Iron Bowl next week at home. Alabama around a 15.5-point favorite as they will host the Auburn Tigers. Insider Bryant Denny. And we'll also talk about a big basketball game going on tonight as the 8th-ranked Tide taking on 25th-ranked Illinois. That should be a lot of fun there at Legacy Arena.
Yeah, that game will be at the BJCC, and if you're not going to be in attendance, then why not head over to Twin Peaks and Hoover? That'd be a great place to watch the Alabama-Illinois game tonight because they got plenty of screens for you to catch all the action, regardless of if it's college basketball, college football, NFL, whatever you may be. They will have it covered for you there at Twin Peaks and Hoover. Order yourself a nice 29-degree man-sized draft. Try out their 2 new wing sauces, their barbecue brisket flatbreads, all of the wonderful offerings for you there while you watch the game at Twin Peaks and Hoover. They also sponsor our daily 3-man front Twitter poll question of the day. And Molly, what is our question for Wednesday?
So what was the biggest surprise from last night's college football playoff rankings? Was it the overvalue of Penn State and Indiana, Boise State with the automatic bye, Tennessee behind Bama and Ole Miss, or Notre Dame to number 6 after their win versus Virginia? And right now winning with 32% of our voters saying the overvalue of Penn State and Indiana. Second with 26% is Boise State with the automatic bye. And Tennessee behind Bama and Ole Miss and Notre Dame to number 6 are tied with 21%.
All right. Continue to vote at the number 3-man front there on Twitter with our poll question of the day. We'll continue to keep you updated. Also, Auburn fans, Jason Caldwell is going to join us at noon. And think about Auburn, not only getting another win on the season to get win number 5, but to finally, for Hugh Freeze, there's so many storylines here. Even with Auburn, probability says that they're probably not going bowling. But you win this game. First of all, it's the first quality win, in my opinion, that Hugh Freeze has had in his tenure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a night game at Jordan-Hare. It is a stinky, fishy line. For the Auburn fans' benefit, I'm going to go ahead and fade the Tigers. That's what I'm going to do, since you think that has some bearing on how they play.
It does, very much so.
But a huge game. And what that could mean for the college football playoff. And Mike Elko, he was asked about it, not overlooking, and he had the mishap, and he actually said, and we're focused on Texas. I mean Auburn. So what that can mean, and then what that could mean for recruiting, signing day for Auburn, the transfer portal moving forward, and momentum heading into the offseason.
Absolutely. So 205-834-9450. We'll take your text, take your phone calls. What did you think of the college football playoff rankings last night? Who was too high? Who was too low? And Tennessee fans, we want to hear from you as well. So we'll get to your reaction, continue breaking down the college football playoff when we return. You're listening to 3-Man Front on Jocks 94.5.
10:21. I guess we'll call it Reaction Wednesday. We had the college football playoff rankings last night. Good news, Alabama fans. You move up. You are only behind the Texas Longhorns, which is serving as your pseudo or placeholder for the SEC championship. But Alabama, handle your business. Now, when it comes to, do you get penalized for playing in a SEC championship game? I think it does depend on, unless something squirrely and you're playing an opponent like you had Ohio State that year playing a Northwestern that some reason lost all of their non-conference games but went undefeated. Or, yeah, they went undefeated in Big Ten play, which shouldn't happen. But a close loss to a quality team, I still think that the value of Alabama, it's carrying weight. You can hate it if you're not an Alabama fan. You can disagree with it. It's the system that we have. And until something else is put in place, it's not going to change. So we dissect it, we diagram it, and here for the first two years of the contract, we're going to get this. Now, do they adjust it? Do they tweak it? My guess is probably, but they're going to have the 2-year sample size to see how everything falls out. And hopefully, for the sake of college football, for fans everywhere, it at least appears somewhat equitable, where it's not slanted, where you don't think that you're getting the majority of the field. You don't think you're getting the best in college football. I think right now, I have a hard time arguing. Now, Tennessee, they would have an argument. Potentially an SMU could have an argument. But the teams outside, there's not a whole bunch of teams that I would say, golly, they're better. They're better. They're better. They're absolutely better. Did bring it up. The fact that Missouri is still ranked in the top 25 blows my mind.
Yeah, and I think, that's Molly brought that up in the break. And I can acknowledge what it is. I'll be honest. I think that's one of those things you have in there to boost teams like Alabama. I honestly think that's why they're there, because we've seen this in the past it was Mississippi State a couple years ago, where they were hanging on there 22, 23, 24 late in the season, even after losing a game. And it was a big part of Alabama's resume, was having these ranked wins. And look, I can call that out. I know exactly what it is. We've seen it before.
And I was saying that as a Mizzou sympathizer too. That I couldn't believe that they were still ranked.
No, but Conrad, it's exactly what it is. Yeah. And let's just call it. Let's not beat around the bush.
No,
we don't have to protect the College Football Playoff Committee. And while we're SEC flag bearers, I've been the first to say I was the one that brought it up on this show when nobody was really talking about it. But Texas, and now it's starting to get some of those national waves where it was taboo to talk about Texas. What are you talking about? They shouldn't be. Are they one of the most talented teams in college football? Absolutely. Do I believe that Texas's ceiling is really, really high? Absolutely. But what have we seen? I've seen one true test that Texas has had this season. And it was at home.
And you failed
in
miserably.
A huge game that was built up, and you knew what you were getting with the Georgia team rolling in there. And not only did you get beat, you looked bad. You looked bad in that game. And then since then, what have we seen from Texas? We saw a 3-point win where they struggled to close out a Vanderbilt team inside of First Bank Stadium.
Yep, didn't look good in Arkansas last weekend.
You won 20-10, but it wasn't near as flashy as Jackson Dart and that Ole Miss offense rolling up 63 points in Reynolds Razorback Stadium.
Yeah, if you're Texas, you don't have a win to hang your hat on. And I'll be honest, we'll see how it plays out. But I think we've also seen, granted, now maybe you can make the Miami argument of, well, why did they not fall as far as some of these other teams? But I know there's a belief out there that, well, if Texas loses to A&M, they're not going to fall out of the top 12. Georgia fell 10 spots when they lost to Ole Miss. BYU just fell 8 spots. They have shown that when they hit, it fits what they want to do. They don't have a problem knocking somebody down a third of the rankings after one loss. So if you're a Texas fan, I don't know if now is the time to be concerned. If you feel good about the A&M game, then you're fine if you win that game. But I'm telling you, if Texas finishes 10-2 with your 2 losses to the 2 ranked teams you had on your schedule, I am not going to be surprised if they're on the outside looking in, because in that situation, Tennessee definitely deserves to be in over Texas.
And you can't tell me historical bias didn't come into play with Miami and their loss to Georgia Tech. Now, while Georgia Tech and Brent Key has done a wonderful job in getting that program turned around, they're not terrible. But historically, and we go back to last year, it's just been one of those teams that has gotten in the crawl of Miami. But I also think what helps Miami is you got a dynamic player at quarterback. You score a lot of points on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, we've heard the committee bring that up.
You believe in certain matchups, and you're not supposed to do this, but in certain matchups, that team can outscore the other.
Yeah, no, I 100% think Miami is getting the credit they do because of Cam Ward. And I'm not saying that's wrong because he's been the best quarterback in college football this year. And if you have that kind of player, essentially anytime you roll the ball out there, you're going to have a chance. So I do not have a problem with that. But again, going back to the BYU conversation, okay, you've been playing with fire all year long. You finally get caught and you lose, and they get punished significantly by the committee because of that. We heard Ward Daniels' his answer last segment. Miami was in the similar boat, though, right? They had been playing with fire all year. You had the close calls against the Virginia Techs, against the Cows, where you kind of got bailed out by officiating in some people's minds. And then you finally lost to an unranked team, but you only fell to number 9. So again, there's still just inconsistencies. And if it is truly because of Cam Ward, like I believe it is, then that's fine. But then just come out and say, hey, they have the best quarterback in the country, so we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt over a BYU team that just suffered a similar loss.
800-239-WJOX. Want to get your reaction, what you thought, what you totally hated about last night's college football playoff rankings, who you think should be in, who does not deserve to be right now slated for a playoff game. We'll get into seeding and some of those early lines that came out last night that might raise some eyebrows around SEC country as well. Well, from daily exercisers, youth athletes to elite professionals, UAB Sports and Exercise Medicine treats everyone with the same level of exceptional care with board-certified professionals. State-of-the-art imaging and injury prevention programs. Our comprehensive team is here to keep you in the game. Visit uabmedicine.org/sports or call 205-930-8339 to make an appointment. UAB Sports and Exercise Medicine, knowledge moving medicine forward. First, we go to Lee. He's in Cincinnati. He wants to talk about the College Football Playoff Committee. Lee, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, guys. And all I have to say is here's the problem that I have. Because if I'm not mistaken, the BCS came up with a formula in order to get rid of all the ambiguity, all of the bias that there was for names, way back when there was only 2 teams that were playing for the championship. All right? And so they came up with a formula, and they said, well, too bad, we don't have a committee anymore. This is just how it's going to be, these 2 teams with the formula. Well, now that we have 12 teams, there's absolutely no way that the best 2 teams are going to get left out because, in my opinion, let's be realistic. I don't think you're ever going to see teams number 10, 11, or 12 ever win the national championship in the playoff system because the teams ahead of them are probably going to be too good. But in my opinion, what that would do is that would get rid of all the questions that we're having right now, like why is this team ranked here? Everyone would know based on a formulaic process where the team's going to be ranked, who's going to be ranked here, and there would be no question. Whether you like it or not, every team is playing by the exact same rules. There is no judgment. There is no human error. There are no flaws in that because of bias and because of ambiguity. And that's what I don't understand. I don't know why college football hasn't done that.
Well, and the only problem with sticking straight with computers, you do take out the human element. In some cases, that's favorable, but there's also squirrely circumstances, and this was not the BCS era, but what we got with the College Football Playoff Committee last year and Florida State. And a computer is not going to recognize a player that is not going to be available, where it's obvious to us, even though a team is winning and handling their business, that they look markedly different than they did when he was playing at full strength. I think that using a combination is a good thing, but I'm like you, Lee. Now with an expanded field, I think it's going to be hard. Any season, whether a team gets a bye or whether they're playing in the first round, no matter where the game is being played, you might not like it, but we're going to leave out one of the 2 best or even 4 best or 6 best teams in college football. I think that is the bonus of this expanded college football playoff, and there's a multitude of other reasons why I love it as a college football fan, because these weekends are so important.
Oh, most definitely. Well, let's face it, from what you just said also, though, we're the 12-team playoff in place last year. Yes, FSU would have made it to the playoff, but they still would not have won. They still would have not have come out on top. We would have still had the champion that there was, and that's what I'm saying. That's the way it's going to be anyhow, and so it totally negates all that, or all the possibilities, like I'm saying, of people saying, well, this is an unfair because the committee's not being right. The committee doesn't know what they're talking about. They're not choosing the correct teams because they're doing it based on their own eye test, but also because of human error. Like you said, that totally gets rid of the human error. Does it mean that a team or 2 might get in that shouldn't sometimes? over another team or two? Yes, but those will be down close to the bottom. The top teams will still always get in, and we'll still have the best team, in my opinion, always playing for the national championship.
Lee, we appreciate the phone call. Thank you as always.
Real quick, okay, I understand the what he's saying about why don't we just use, computer rankings? Why don't we just use those with the 12-team format? I know Pat brings this up sometimes. All right, this is how the BCS would have the top 12 today that we got in the college football playoff rankings. Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Indiana 5, Notre Dame 6, Georgia 7, Alabama 8, Ole Miss 9, Miami 10, Tennessee 11, SMU 12. The only difference between the BCS and the college football playoff rankings is Alabama was a spot slower and they had them and Georgia flipped, and then you had SMU at 12 instead of Boise State. Otherwise, the rankings are the exact same. And so I understand, people say, well, why don't we just go back to the old way? The committee's bad. And we can argue about the committee and where teams are seated, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be that much different if we go with the old computer rankings versus what we have right now.
Yeah, and so when it comes to first-round matchups involving SEC teams, some early lines came out, and it's interesting the difference that we see in some of these particular matchups, but it also tells you where Vegas, from a power ratings perspective, and they do try to set lines, but they have to have a basis and a formula that they just don't pull these numbers out of their, what. They have to have a power ratings, and then they can adjust the line and they can tweak it, but they're trying to get money on both sides. All right, we all know that. Alabama and Notre Dame, that would be played in South Bend. Alabama's a 9 seed. Notre Dame is an 8 seed, correct?
Correct.
Alabama would be a 1.5-point favorite.
Easy money.
Georgia, as an 11 seed, playing at Happy Valley, taking on Penn State. Georgia, according to early Vegas lines, would be a 1.5-point favorite.
Easy money.
Easy money.
Now, you're writing off Indiana, and you're saying, well, look at their schedule. Okay. But there are people that are very smart, and they're not perfect, but they have taken this Indiana team in a power rating, and they have watched those 10 games, even though some people think that they're garbage and they're not deserving. And this Ole Miss team, as well as they're playing right now, traveling to Bloomington on a cold day in December, Ole Miss would only be a 1.5-point favorite.
I would feel pretty good about laying some money on that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's why they play the games, but I think it's just a lot of people will be surprised to see.
If Indiana wins this weekend, is that going to change your mind totally?
Yes,
100%.
100%. But because we just haven't seen it, right? It's the same thing with Texas. Texas, if they go and blow out Texas A&M by 30, then yeah, I have no problem with them being one of the 3 best teams in the country. Just like Indiana, if they beat Ohio State this weekend, they should be one of the 3 best teams.
The cool thing to me, and this is sometimes we haven't noticed the flaw until we've gotten to the championship game. Sorry, Bama fans, but I'll bring up the year that Alabama played Clemson. And I stated, and I think everybody here at this radio station, but I was so emphatic that Clemson had been skating by with a weak schedule. Alabama had been dominating people with margin of victory. And then that game was in Miami, right?
The one where Clemson blew out Alabama?
You had the early Tua interception.
Yep.
The pick 6.
Yep.
And Clemson had their way, and they dominated that.
Yep.
It opened my eyes where, okay, it's not, you can't solely predict a matchup and how an outcome is going to go just based on how a team wins or who they have played or who they haven't played. That's not always the case.
Yeah.
But I look at this Ohio State team. I look at Oregon, look at Alabama. All of these teams that are going to be in the college football playoff have flaws.
Yes.
There is not that one team rolling into the college football playoff where you say, it's them and then it's everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that this year. Now, is that because of a college football playoff? Well, no. That's because of parity. That's because of the transfer portal and what NIL has done to kind of reshape the game.
Absolutely. No, that you're spot on with that. And I think that's what makes it so interesting is we can sit here and I can say, oh, well, I like the SEC and all those matchups, but it's not a situation where it's like, oh, those teams aren't worthy of being in the playoffs. I think we just, we have SEC bias, and we've seen, Penn State over the last few years not inspire a lot of confidence in people. Same thing with Notre Dame. Indiana's the interesting one because it's more of an unknown on top of the fact that they just beat the crap out of the teams that they play. Granted, the competition hasn't been great. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I know a lot of people a little surprised that there wasn't bigger lines there for some SEC teams.
We do have time to chat with you. We'll get to the Jocks text line as well. A lot of you have already texted in 205-834-9450, 800-239-WJOX. Your reaction to last night's college football playoff rankings, who should be in, who should be left out, and how you would fix the system moving forward. Three-man front on a Wednesday, Jocks 94.5. .39, three-man front. Getting your reaction to the college football playoff rankings last night. To run them down for you in case you miss it, Oregon is at number 1, Texas at 2, Miami at 3, Boise at 4 as far as seeding goes. Ohio State would be your 5 seed, BYU, your 12 seed. Okay, so they're still hanging around?
Well, yeah, because they would be the 5th conference champion. But talk about Ohio State, man. You get BYU and Boise State as your first 2 matchups potentially.
There is scrutiny being placed on seeding and potentially what teams could get who if a team has a first round bye or how that goes. Because then if you're Oregon, congratulations.
You get Alabama.
You're either going to get Alabama or Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah. And that, again, we can talk about this more in depth later, but it's not only the argument of, well, we don't have to suffer a loss in the conference championship, but it honestly might give you a more beneficial matchup to not be your conference champion, which that is not good.
Text coming in 205-834-9450. We will get to your text momentarily.
Well, let me tell you about Big Whiskeys because they are your place for great food of all varieties with a full menu ranging from apps, salads, burgers to steaks. Their bar features unique cocktails, over 120 whiskeys, including whiskey on tap, and plenty of screens to catch all the games all weekend long. In this holiday season, let Big Whiskeys do the work as they can cater for your party or social event of any size. So go check them out in the Stadium Trace Village of Highway 150 near the Hoover Met.
All right, potential scenarios. We do have a huge game coming up in the Big Ten this weekend as Indiana, unbeaten, traveling to once beaten Ohio State. What that could mean on the text line 205-834-9450. In your opinion, Mike asked in Trustful, hey, Mike, what is the scenario if Indiana beats Ohio State? I am firmly in belief that Indiana will get the credit that they deserve going on the road, beating an Ohio State team, and they will move over Texas, and we will have two Big Ten teams, 1 and 2, in the rankings next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that would be much deserved. And in that scenario, you're probably looking at Oregon, Indiana, and the Big Ten championship. And regardless of who loses that game, they're still going to be in a good spot to make the playoffs. So, yeah, if Indiana wins, if you win this game on Saturday, you're in. No questions for Indiana. However, if you're Ohio State, I don't think they're going to fall out. But
no.
There will be
Penn
some
State
conversations.
probably gets bumped down.
Yes, they do. And Ohio State's going to get credit for Penn State in that win because it's going to be a top 5 win, even though none of us agree or believe that Penn State's actually one of the 5 best teams. But the Ohio State resume is not as strong as you might think.
Jamie asked if Indiana beats Ohio State, should they be number 1? You can make the argument because, well, how do they beat Ohio State? Because Oregon has already done so.
I mean, if they do to Ohio State what they did to Nebraska, sure. I mean, if you're beating Ohio State by 3-4 touchdowns,
that's a different discussion.
Yes, but that would be a shock.
And don't think that the way that, and sorry, Molly, to your team's demise, but that is when people actually started giving a little bit of credence to Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
What they did in 56-7.
Something like that.
Is that right?
I try to forget it.
Over Nebraska.
Yeah.
It was just a nightmare day for Molly.
It's been a nightmare season.
When did you stop watching that game? Halftime?
Yeah, halftime. I had to cut it off.
Pat B texts in. He says, Miami could get eliminated in 2 weeks of the loss to Syracuse and unable to play in the ACC championship. 3 seed to out of college football playoff, very possible.
Yeah.
Let's see that happening.
Syracuse is pretty good.
Paul Duvall says the eye test is a disguised way to say how I feel about a team. Feelings have no place in the rating system. Get some non-biased mathematicians together. They'll get it right.
And again, I think it would be impossible for something like that to happen unless there was a way you could rank the teams without knowing who the actual teams are, right? You have all the data points in front of you, strength of schedule, head-to-head, all of these different factors without the logos and brands attached to them because, again, it's the human element of it, right?
Yep.
Some teams are going to get the benefit of the doubt because of the conference they play in, their past track record in the playoffs, what have you. There's no way for it to truly be 100% fair and unbiased as long as you have logos attached.
Keep the text rolling in. We'll continue to get to your text throughout the show. Coming up next, Brian Edwards, our resident Vegas insider. He's got all kinds of good scoop, not only in college football, maybe some futures, but also the NFL. You don't want to miss it. Brian is next, the Wednesday edition of 3-Man Front. Landrum, Conrad, and Molly on Jocks 94.5. 10:49, three-man front on this Wednesday. You hear that coming back. That means that our resident Vegas insider, senior handicapper for Vegas Insider, just a friend of the show, and he offers his great knowledge to us. Doesn't charge us a thing for it. Just likes helping people out. It's Brian Edwards, and he joins us on the Buyers Right Insurance Hotline. Brian, how are you on this Wednesday?
Doing great, guys. How are y'all?
Doing well. Are you feeling really, really good about your Florida Gators right now? Had the big win over LSU this past weekend, and they can play spoiler for the college football playoff and for Lane Kiffin, a coach that you guys once desired. Maybe you still do. But first, I want to get your thoughts on that game and maybe how your opinion has changed of your head ball coach, Billy Napier.
Well, nice to get a win, but the Tim Brandos and the Kirk Herbstreits of the world that, are trying to create this national narrative of what a wonderful job Billy Napier's done. And my goodness, boy, is this team playing hard. I don't really, we beat a fading LSU team at home. Napier's 2-10 in rivalry games. He's now 11-19 against Power 5 opponents. I mean, look, I'm not trying to be Mr. Debbie Downer or anything, but can we please relax with this national narrative of, my goodness, Billy Napier has just done an incredible job. Not really. But anyway, we'll see what happens this week.
I apologize to the Napier family. I tried, guys, but Brian is stuck there. And some of your points, they're very valid. All right, games happening this weekend that you have circled on your board. BYU, that was a fishy line last week. And I realized that power ratings and trying to get money on both sides, that was a stinky line. I was headstrong, and I went BYU. They said they were going to hold serve. That didn't happen. You had a 3-6 Kansas team come in and get the win. Now you got Arizona State, and all of a sudden, Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils, they're 8-2 on the season. Nobody looking at them. Nobody expected much. We certainly didn't. Dion at Colorado doing the same thing. Arizona State and BYU. Are you going Sun Devils or are you going Cougs?
I'm going Sun Devils, but not because, look, BYU should have won that game last week. They had a first and goal at the 5-yard line and threw an interception with 39 seconds left in the first half. They coughed up a fumble on their own 3, which gave Kansas a one-play 3-yard touchdown drive. So it's not I'm fading BYU. It's that I'm backing Arizona State, 8-2, both straight up and against the spread on the season. They're on a 3-game winning streak, both straight up and ATS, and 5-1, both straight up and ATS in their last 6. And at home this year, they're 5-0, straight up and against the spread. And maybe off their best performance of the year, they go to the Little Apple and play K-State. And K-State was undefeated at home this year, 11-1 straight up in its last 12 home games. ASU jumps on them 21-0 early second. Sam Leavitt, 3 touchdown passes. They extend the lead to 24-0 early third. K-State did not get on the board until 2:51 left in the third. Cam Scattaboo returned after missing a game with an injury. He's got 1,074 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, 5.4 yards per carry average. And Leavitt's got a 17-4 TDI and T ratio. I believe we have the quarterback advantage. I believe we have the head coaching advantage, and we're at home, and we're only laying 3. I made Arizona State 4.5. Give me the Sun Devils.
All right. In the SEC, you got Kentucky. They got the win over Murray State in their final tune-up for what will be an uneventful postseason. They're not going bowling. But you've got a Kentucky team that's lost their last 4 SEC games. They traveled to Austin to take on a Texas team that, to me, I still have questions on. But 21 points, that is a lot of points. You like the Wildcats if you're going to buy the half point, right?
Yep, I'm going to buy it from 20.5 to 21. This might be my favorite pick of the week. This line is way inflated, and this is a vintage look-ahead spot for Texas with an A&M game, which is obviously their biggest rival. They haven't played them since 2011. It's going to have SEC, CFP implications. And on the Kentucky side, they actually are still bowl eligible, and they did win at Ole Miss. So they're going in there thinking they can win this game, and they've won 5 in a row over Louisville. And so they got Louisville on deck. So they go in thinking they can win this game. They got their stud corner Maxwell Hairston back last week. He was second team All SEC last year when he had 5 interceptions, and he had been out for 5 straight games with a shoulder injury. And Jamon Dumas-Johnson, their leading tackler, and J.J. Weaver, those two and Maxwell Hairston were all out for the Tennessee game. And yet Kentucky, had the lead in the second half in that game and, was right there. Tennessee got a little separation late, but maybe they got a little confidence back from an offensive standpoint last week. And they might get Dumas-Johnson and they might get Weaver back, and they do have Hairston back. And Kentucky's been a double-digit underdog 3 times this year, 3-0 against the spread with 1 outright win. And they covered the spread by 47 combined points in those 3 games as double-digit dogs. They lost by 1 to Georgia at home. They won outright at Ole Miss. And then the other one was the Tennessee game where they easily covered and were right there, in a position to win the game. And Texas, again, look-ahead spot, and they are 1-3 against the spread in their last 4. Give me Kentucky. I'm buying the half point to plus 21 for minus 120 juice.
All right, Brian, we'll roll through your remaining games pretty quickly. Indiana plus 14. A lot of people are going to be paying attention to this as they travel to Ohio State. That's going to be their toughest challenge. I'm curious, where your power rankings have Indiana? Where did you have this line set?
Let's see. My Big Ten. Oh, wait. Here we go. I had Ohio State as a 10-point favorite. I don't think anybody is going to dispute that Ohio State has better talent, better overall talent, better, big game experience, etc. But even though it's on the road, the spot favors Indiana in that, they've had 2 weeks to prepare. Ohio State has not. And in my handicapping, I put a lot of emphasis on head coaching and quarterback play. And I think we had the edge in both of those departments. Curtis Rourke this year, 21-4 TDINT ratio. And also got 2 rushing touchdowns. I think he's better than Will Howard. I think this Indiana team has absolutely crushed everybody except for Michigan. They kind of had an off second half. But let's remember, Michigan's got a lot of NFL players on that defense.
Sure.
And they just struggled offensively in the second half. They still won the game. They're brimming with confidence. I like Indiana. Let's buy the half point to 14, or maybe just be patient. Maybe it's going to get to 14 on its own. I like the Hoosiers.
All right, Brian, I'll give out the rest of your picks to our audience. We're up against the break. We always appreciate the time. Go Gators for your sake. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, fellas. Y'all have a great weekend.
Brian Edwards will give you the rest of his picks coming up next, as well as voice of the Tide, Chris Stewart. 11 o'clock here on Three Man Front. Plenty of talk in the first hour about the college football playoff rankings. We get another edition last night. A lot of your texts, a lot of your phone calls coming in. We'll continue throughout the show to discuss not only what we know now, what we don't know, potential scenarios, not only for conference championship games, including the SEC, but also around the country. Well, right here locally, when it comes to your technology, don't settle for anything less than a winning team. Evolve IT, they're your trusted local IT partner. At Evolve IT, they're your MVPs for all things tech, like network management, cybersecurity, and keeping your business systems running smoothly. No fumbles, no downtime, just expert support right here in Birmingham. And that's the key. There's a lot of fine IT companies out there nationwide, but having Evolve IT locally here in Birmingham, your business, it's got to be running. Even when you're off for the holidays, enjoying time with your family, if something goes bump in the night, something happens on, let's say, Thanksgiving morning, maybe Christmas morning, you have a problem, your system is down, you need your business to continue to function, you can call our friends at Evolve IT. A human being is going to answer the phone, and they're going to take care of you right away. Find them online, evolvebhm.com. That's evolvebhm.com, or give them a call, 205-749-8970. That is Evolve IT. And the voice of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Chris Stewart, joins us in this spot every single Wednesday. He's presented by our friends at Craneworks.
Lift it, load it, grade it, grind it, move it, haul it, rig it, dig it, Craneworks, Rentalworks, yeah, the big dog's got it.
Crimson Tide Network's Chris Stewart on Three Man Front is brought to you by Craneworks. Lift it, buy it, rent it. The big dog's got it. And now, Chris Stewart.
And Chris Stewart joins us, as all of our guests do, on the Buyers Right Hotline. Chris, how are you this Wednesday? Almost afternoon. It's morning. It's afternoon somewhere. How are you?
Yeah. It's afternoon somewhere, which was not nearly as good a title as 5 o'clock, but it still was pretty good. No, yeah, I'm good. I'm looking forward to flying out tomorrow, going to Norman. Hadn't been there in a while. I'm more excited, I think, at least initially, about Oklahoma City and dinner at Mickey Mantle's tomorrow night. It'll be a great weekend, at least I know up until kickoff, and then hopefully it continues to be from that point forward.
I'm not trying. I've been to Oklahoma City a couple of times, and it's a cool city, and I really enjoyed it.
It is. It really is.
I was always a little bit freaked out with the name of the airport, and it's still the Will Rogers Airport, correct? Is that?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the way that he tragically died in a plane crash, and I always thought that was very interesting that they would name the airport.
You know, not 100% sure that I realized that fact, but hey, I appreciate you ruining the next 24 hours.
That makes you feel great about your trip tomorrow.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Sorry about that. All right.
That's all right, man.
Oh, well, Conrad is actually traveling out there with his family. He's going to be at the game.
Yeah, I'm driving now, Chris, thanks to what Landrum just shared.
So
yeah, good call.
I shared this with him a while back. I should have let you in on it as well. But this Oklahoma team, obviously Brent Venables experiencing, they've been decimated with injuries. He had to fire Seth Luttrell as offensive coordinator early in the season. Nothing has seemingly gone right, but I'm sure it's not lost on you, and hopefully for Kalen DeBoer and that team, how tough that environment can be, and they're going to be keyed up for a big-time opponent rolling in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely agree. And it's, I'm not saying it's their season, but it's one of those where when you're in this position, you're the carrot that's out there dangling in front of you is ruining somebody else's season. And look, it still looks great on the marquee, Alabama and Oklahoma. And while they're down from what they're accustomed to, they're still proud. They've still got some talent. And you're right, their fans will be into it early on and trying to help that club do what they can to mess things up for the Crimson Tide. We've seen what that can look like at all, not just Alabama, but all teams. And it's a dangerous game. Look, it is, I'd rather be in our position than theirs, but there's no question that it's a dangerous place to go. Always can be a challenge. And it's just crazy. I've been there a number of times. I've done baseball games in Oklahoma City between Bama and OU. That was probably my first or second time out there. did a game at Bricktown Ballpark when it was still fairly new, and in Alabama, Oklahoma. I've done several basketball games in Norman, but the real irony is the last time I was there and did a football game, Dennis Franchione was the head coach and Tyler Watts was the quarterback, and now we're going back for the first time since, and Tyler will be my color analyst that day. So it's been a while, but it will be, I think, really special. Again, hopefully at least until kickoff, and then about 7 minutes in, we'll have it as quiet as we did in Baton Rouge 2 weeks ago.
Well, I hope you're right about that, Chris, because that my 10 or 11-hour car ride home is not going to be very fun if the Tide doesn't show up on Saturday. But based on what we've seen the last 3 times out from them, they have looked very, very good. I want to talk about this Alabama defense real quick. So now 5 straight games for this Alabama defense that they've had 3 or more takeaways. How have you seen this defense grow under Kane Womack throughout the season? Because I think early on, you know, you maybe had some folks saying, well, Alabama's going to have to outscore a lot of opponents if they want to, you know, keep winning football games. But now this defense has really become a strength for the Crimson Tide, and a lot of it comes away from their ability to create turnovers.
Yeah, I was one of the people that said that. You know, you're going to have to score more than we're accustomed to, because that may be how we have to win games, and certainly early that was the case. But Coach DeBoer and Coach Womack played a lot of young guys early. First of all, you know, you had 8 new starters on defense, so you know they're going to be challenges anyway. But you've got not only new players in starting roles, but a lot of them are new to your program, and it's a new scheme that all of them are learning. So there were lumps to be expected, but they played a bunch of freshmen early on. And I think a lot of us, not confused, but we're kind of curious, all right, is this just what they do? Is it necessitated because maybe there's not as many guys that they can rely on, but they were simply trying to get guys ready for this time of year? And it's paid off because, you know, guys like Jalen Mbakwe, Xavier's been huge, you know, with what he did against Georgia, but also just overall, I think he's gotten more mature. And those are just a couple examples of young guys stepping up, learning, getting to be more productive players for the Alabama defense. And they're as comfortable and as confident as we've seen them at any point. You know, the loss at Tennessee stung, but they were still good defensively for the most part in that game, struggled at times in the second half, but it took, for the most part, really good plays, well-executed plays to get the results that Tennessee wanted. So I do think they have shown a lot of maturity, a lot of growth, really since the Vanderbilt game, and excited to see what they can be the rest of the way. And what they do in the next 2 weeks will determine what the rest of the way actually is, where it is, and what it looks like.
Voice of the Tide, Chris Stewart, joining us courtesy of Craneworks, and all of our guests joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline. This Oklahoma team, and you would expect defense under Brent Venables, they've been very good against the run. That's no big surprise. They've been susceptible against the pass. With that being said, it's going to be a different picture than what we saw against LSU, that had struggled with especially a scrambling quarterback, an athletic quarterback. They had not seen the likes of Jalen Milroe prior to that point there in Red Stick, Chris. But if Jalen Milroe, if Oklahoma decides we're going to commit this many guys to shut down the run and we're going to limit what he's able to do, how confident do you believe that Jalen Milroe, that coaching staff, is into being in predictable situations where you're going to have to throw the football?
Well, I don't care how good you are or how experienced you are or how much success you've had in the past. Nobody is as comfortable in third and long as they are in third and short. What I do think is different is because of Jalen's success throwing the ball at times, and the fact that they've mixed it up. You know, you can say the run game, but the truth is they have used the passing game almost as run plays a good bit, especially early in ball games, trying to help him grow the confidence, quick out, getting the ball out of his hand in a hurry, whether it's to a running back or a receiver. And there's so much speed on the edge, and there's power and speed in the backfield. And I think they're all understanding better how to utilize that, and they're having more success, which opens things up for you more down the field in the pass game. And the other added difficulty for defenses is that when Jalen's got the ball in his hand, you don't know if it's run or pass. If it's a pure, if it's a pure pocket guy, then it's a little bit easier to read. Doesn't mean it's easy to stop, but you have at least a better feel for what type of play you're trying to defend. But with Jalen, balls in his hands, it could be anything. And I think as his confidence has grown in the last 2 to 3 weeks, it's not a coincidence that this team has been more productive, especially on the offensive side.
So sticking with the offense here for a second, Chris, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Ryan Williams has been the number one guy. Jeremy Bernard has been a big factor as well. But, I understand it was Mercer last week, but we got to see Rico Scott had that big touchdown catch at the end from Austin Mack. Caleb Odom seemed to get targeted. He seemed to be a focal point of the offense at times. Do you think some of those guys maybe, or even a Kendrick Law, a guy that we have heard so much about and seems to have all the potential in the world, he just hasn't gotten those touches? Are these guys that you think will be bigger factors for this Alabama offense moving down the line, or was that more of just we're playing Mercer, so it's a good time to get more looks for these guys?
Chris, for some reason, he has dropped off the line. We will try to reconnect with Chris momentarily, but it is interesting in what he said. You're right. When Jalen Milroe does have the football, it does make it somewhat of a guessing game because he can pull it down at any time. I think that maybe the criticism when people thought that Jalen Milroe was hurt earlier in the season is he was allowing himself to go through maybe one too many progressions, and then that gave the defense obviously time to react. As Chris Stewart, voice of the Tide, rejoins us here on Three Man Front, courtesy of Craneworks. Yeah,
hey Chris, I don't know if you caught any of my question.
I did. I think you were about to get to Kendrick Law.
Yes. Yeah. Him and Rico Scott and Caleb Odom and some of these guys that maybe haven't been a big part of the offense so far, but as we saw against Mercer, some of those guys getting more of a run there. Do you think they're going to be bigger factors moving forward for the offense, or was that just a case of, well, we're playing Mercer, it's a good time to give these guys some playing time?
I think for the younger guys, the future's bright. We got a good taste of what they will be in the future, and that the future could include the next month. I think there's definitely a place for them, in the rotation and opportunities. But Kendrick Law to me is one that makes Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard all the more dangerous because now you've got him at full speed. He is really a threat running the football, but also obviously as a receiver and then the run after catch. He's a really good football player. And him now being healthy enough to really be himself makes that a really talented trio at wide receiver. I'm excited about him, and I think he's added a great deal. I think there's a real tie with Jalen's comfort level increasing and his availability. Not that he didn't have confidence in Jeremy and Ryan, but I think there's just more history, there's more comfort level, and more options. One more veteran guy, talented guy, fast guy that he's got available to him in the pass game. And I just know that I would really hate to be an opposing defensive coordinator trying to figure out what in the heck is going to be drawn up by Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan, but also in trying to stop guys that are as skilled as Bama's are, both at quarterback and wide receiver, but also those running backs who I still think have their best games ahead of them.
Chris, I do want to get your reaction. We'll get your total reaction of the college football playoff rankings from last night. And these will change, obviously, with more meaningful, impactful games coming up. But for the Alabama Crimson Tide right now, they're in the driver's seat. They handled their business. They're going to be back in Atlanta. Now the discussion centers around the uncertainty of the college football playoff committee, and would a potential loss of Alabama, would that ding them enough to prevent them from making the college football playoff? I know that you've probably had the same discussions and thought about the same things. from my personal point of view, I think it would be a horrible precedent for the committee to set if Alabama played a quality opponent, which they should in that game, and lost by a close margin and still got left out. What are your feelings on that? And is there some uneasiness with the unknown?
There's always uneasiness with that. Landry, you and I may have talked about this last week. There's always in a 10 to 15-year stretch, there's going to be an outlier of the season. And I do think it's entirely possible that this year could be the outlier. It could be the odd year. And it turns out when we look years from now that it's this season where you've got a 3-loss team that is the runner-up for the Southeastern Conference Championship. And I hope it's somebody else. I hope it's another team that's a 3-loss team that's having to plead their case, which would mean that Bama's won and they either won the SEC title or for whatever reason didn't get in the championship game but still got in the playoff. I think it would be very difficult to keep the SEC runner-up, especially this year. There will be a year at some point where the league's maybe not as good, not worthy. I struggle seeing that, but it can happen. I'll take you to basketball. The SEC 10 years ago was mediocre, and we had a season. Anthony Grant's second year. I know we're talking about more than 10 years now, but Anthony Grant's second season, Alabama basketball, we went to the very last game of the regular season. Bama had won earlier that day, and we were Vanderbilt fans that night because if Florida lost, Alabama was going to be co-champions of the SEC regular season with Florida. Florida won. Bama finished as a game back, did not get one of 3 bids to the NCAA tournament from the league. So in football, can it happen? Yeah. I just can't see a 3-loss Alabama this year if the loss comes in the championship game being left out. It's not about the 3 losses. It's about the SEC runner-up.
Sure.
And the fact that it would have been, yes, Vanderbilt, but at a time when Vanderbilt was playing very well and Bama wasn't. Bama got better, lost to what was a good Tennessee team and still didn't play its best, but turned out to be really good. You've still got the Georgia win on the resume. And like you said, maybe it comes down to a field goal, tight game, controversial finish, whatever. But Bama, yes, had 3 losses, and they're the runner-up. I see us obviously being on the road, but I would be surprised and really disappointed to see that happen. And take away Alabama, say maybe it's, I know it's probably not going to happen, but what if it was Georgia? What if it, was Tennessee? Whatever. Those are teams that have good resumes, but especially speaking in terms of the Tide, I think that would be really odd to see them, wouldn't you agree? Bama's 7 right now? And I honestly hadn't looked at it real close simply because it puts you in knots trying to figure out what if.
Right.
But let's say Alabama's number 7 right now. You would think that if Bama wins its next 2 games, they're not going to slide any further down than 7.
No.
Okay. From when we get to playoff. So are you going to slide from 7 all the way out if you lose in your conference championship game, but you've had to play one more game than everybody else? I just would be a little surprised if nothing will shock me.
Right.
Nothing will shock me, but that would surprise me and obviously disappoint me if it was the case. And just like Florida State fans were understandably disappointed at being undefeated and left out of the playoff last year.
Yeah, and the only outlier would be there, and I agree with you on everything you said there about even a loss, but if you got boat race for some reason, you looked absolutely horrible, absolutely. And then you had, like Florida State had last year, you've also got injuries to certain guys and impact players. That certainly changes the conversation, but I'm like you. I find it hard to believe especially with the brand awareness that this committee obviously has with not only the SEC and the Big Ten, and whether you like it or not, I think it's well-deserved. I do want to ask you potential venues, because with Alabama right now as a 9 seed, they would be taking on 8 seed Notre Dame in South Bend. If I take away team, who you're playing, and you think how the tide matches up, if I'm just going strictly venue, Columbus, Ohio, South Bend, Indiana, Happy Valley, or Bloomington, where would Chris Stewart pick to go and call that game?
Man, I have been to Happy Valley. I would definitely take my chances against them, but been to Happy Valley. I have not been to Ohio State. That would be really cool. I have not done a game in South Bend. Alabama, Notre Dame just sounds terrific. And Alabama playing in Bloomington at Assembly Hall sounds fantastic. In basketball, football-wise, great respect for what they've done there, and the former Alabama assistant, who's their head coach, done a great job. That's a tough one. An undefeated Indiana is going to, or league champion Indiana, is going to be the host.
Sure. I just didn't know if you had a bucket list. Like I assumed that you had never done a game there at Notre Dame.
If I'm picking one, I would say Notre Dame. I did the sidelines. The coach Saban's, 4th year.
Yeah.
We went up there and played. It was Joe Pa's last year. It wasn't long. I mean, in fact, I'm not so sure it wasn't later that same season that things kind of came unglued as far as that whole legacy and the stuff that came out. But it was still Joe Pa, and it was still Happy Valley then. And that was an amazing place to be. That being said, to be able to sit down, put on the headset, and do play-by-play for Alabama at Notre Dame would be very, very special.
Quickly, I do want to get your thoughts. You're not going to be doing the game. Our friend Roger Hoover is going to be on the play-by-play call for Alabama and Illinois tonight. Legacy Arena at the BJCC with a tip-off at 8 o'clock. But just your synopsis, what you think about this particular matchup and what Nate Oates and the Tide will face tonight.
I'm really excited to see them after, what wasn't a bad performance at Purdue, but had a rough stretch. They got up 6 and you blink and they're down 7 and it was over. Wasn't truly over, but you look back and you go, that's where the game was lost. I think this is a group that's going to be really motivated. Illinois was an Elite 8 team last year as well. Really good matchup, all part of a phenomenal schedule that's been put together. But I think this team will play better. They learned where they got exposed in some areas. They learned where some weaknesses are, and I just think that's a mature group. I didn't say old, but mature, because you do have veterans, but even young guys that have maturity to them. I think this will be a fun game to watch for Bama fans. I hate that I can't be there, and we got the radio show that night as well, and Roger will be great on the call. But man, I love the BJCC. It's where I grew up going to games, and it's always special for me, sentimental for me to walk back in that building. A lot of memories with me and my late father at that place, and hate that I can't be there. But it'll be a great atmosphere. I hope people will. I think there were a few tickets left. I hope they'll buy them up, because it's. Night Edie does a great job, and that's such a good-looking venue. They've done a wonderful job in all the work they did to renovate and basically redo that Civic Center. And you got an elite Alabama team, the last outing notwithstanding, and I hope they'll go and take advantage of seeing a game like that in a venue like that.
Well, and you talk about the venue, you talk about the renovations, and we're proud of it here in Birmingham to have Legacy Arena. And if I can remember correctly, part of those renovations, you had our friends at Craneworks that brings you our visit every week. Yeah.
You are, man, you ever consider doing radio for a living?
I thought about it.
Really good. Craneworks is the most trusted name for crane and equipment rental in the Southeast, have been for 30 years. They've got a fleet of cranes, great, range of sizes, 2.5 tons all the way to 500 tons. They got trained and certified operators making sure the job is done right. Plus, they got locations not only in Birmingham, but also Nashville, Mobile, and now in Huntsville as well. We invite you to check them out online, craneworks.com, for more info.
All right, leave out the factoid that I mentioned to your fellow passengers about Will Rogers in the airport and how he met his demise. But if you want to impress them, you will know that the first shopping cart, it came from Oklahoma City.
Wow. Did it come with the wheel off balance, though, and wiggling sideways to make a rattling noise?
Yes.
Or did we have to did we have to invent that later?
It had the janked up wheel, at least on one side.
Okay.
Yep. The Humpty Dumpty supermarket.
That would be a great band name. Janked up wheel.
Janked up wheel. Oh, voice of the time.
Janked up wheel.
Chris Stewart. Chris, safe travels and bring back a win, and we'll talk to you next week.
Look forward to it. Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Chris Stewart, courtesy of Craneworks on the Buyers Right hotline. Buyers Right Insurance. Well, for all of your insurance, financial, and HR needs, it's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner.
Well, coming up, we will continue to react to what Chris Stewart just said, break down Alabama, Oklahoma, as well as continue to talk about the college football playoff rankings. 205-834-9450. We'd love to hear from you, and we will do that next here on Three Man Front.
11:30, fun visit. Chris Stewart, voice of the Tide, presented by Craneworks. Brian Edwards in the first hour as well. And apologies, we had to cut our visit short with Brian Edwards. We were out of time, and we had Chris coming up at 11 o'clock. But the rest, in addition to him liking Arizona State -3 versus BYU, Kentucky +21 buying the half point at Texas. He likes Indiana +14 buying the half point at Ohio State. Missouri -7 buying a half point at Mississippi State. And finally, Bama -7 in the first half at OU. So those are all of Brian Edwards' picks. You can always find the segment, though it wouldn't have helped you for those last two picks, but you can find it there at the Three Man Front podcast at jocksfm.com. If you have an older roof, you're thinking it may need to be replaced before you spend a whole bunch of money, you got to listen to this. Our friends at Roof Max of Hoover have a professional and affordable roof treatment scientifically proven to reduce the aging process of your asphalt roof. Roof Max resaturates your old, dirty, dry shingles with a natural bio-friendly treatment that gives you 5 more years of protection guaranteed. Average cost of replacing a roof, I tell you about it all the time, $15,000 to $20,000. And that's without the help of insurance. If it's not Mother Nature and you don't have an adjuster that comes out there and said, you get a new roof like they did with my house when the tornadoes rolled in back in 2011, you're going to have to come out of pocket. And that's not good for anybody. Pay pennies on the dollar with Roof Max. Get 5 more years of protection guaranteed. They put their stamp on it. Roof Max of Hoover, 205-913-2243. Use promo code JOCKS for the 10% discount. Get the free roof assessment. Once again, Roof Max Hoover, 205-913-2243. Make sure you tell them Landrum from Three Man Front sent you.
205-834-9450. That'll get you on the Jocks text line or the Buyers Right hotline, like our buddy Michael, who chimes in. How are you doing this morning, Michael?
Good. Hey, so what do y'all think about Dan Mullen possibly getting back in the coaching? I've heard him possibly up for coordinator jobs for Michigan and Oklahoma. What do you think about a head coaching job for Dan Mullen?
I think that, thank you, Michael, for the phone call. But yeah, that in case you were wondering, and Brenton Venables was actually asked about it during the teleconference or his press conference. He said he had a conversation with Dan Mullen about being an offensive coordinator a year ago. At that time, Dan was happy doing what he did. Mm-hmm. Thus, you hire Seth Luttrell, an OU guy that he got fired as an offensive mind, and I think he's a talented coach from North Texas. But now more conversations coming up and some rumors that Dan Mullen might be ready to get back into it. I think it'd be ideal because Dan Mullen with the head coaching experience, but being away, and maybe he just wants to go and call that side of the ball. And he doesn't have to deal with all the other rigors that head coaches do in running a program. Brent Venables certainly is going to respect that side of the ball. He's a defensive-minded coach. He's going to let Dan do his thing. And I think it would actually be a really good situation and a good fit there in Norman.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that would be a better fit than maybe Michigan, for example, because, of course, Sherrone Moore was the offensive guy there before Jim Harbaugh left, and then that's when he took over. But, yeah, I think that could be a very you never know how these things are going to go, but just having Venables with his expertise on the defensive side of the ball, clearly they have gotten that figured out. They have made big strides in that department at Oklahoma. But yeah, like you said, Dan Mullen, a great offensive mind, great history of working with quarterbacks. But when he was at Florida, I mean, we knew he didn't like to recruit, and this gives you an opportunity to not really have to worry about that as much. And I think that would be an interesting hire. But again, we'll just have to wait and see if Coach Mullen decides that he wants to get back into that or keep doing what he's doing. So appreciate the call. We'll get to some of your text. We've had texts coming in all morning about the college football playoff rankings. Still so much more to discuss there. We will hear from you next here when we return on Three Man Front and Jocks 94.5.
11:38 here on Three Man Front. Abbreviated crew participation report. Pat Smith, he's not on it today for Three Man Front.
No gold star for him.
No, Pat with some well-deserved time off, and I'm sure that he is on chore number 5. We know that he wakes up typically around 3:45, 4 a.m. That's not because he's a warrior. I mean, he is, but he just can't sleep. So he's probably knocked out a lot of different projects.
Oh, I talked to him on the phone this morning. I said, "What time did you get up today?" He said, "About 5 o'clock." Okay. Enjoy your time off, Pat.
Yep. It's a guy that wakes up. He doesn't need coffee. He doesn't consume caffeine.
No.
That's just remarkable.
That is the most impressive thing about Pat.
He has his sugary cereal because he's still a kid at heart. And then he hits the ground running.
Yeah.
And today it was outside of the moat.
Well, those Gators don't
Gators
take
need
care
love
of
too.
themselves, huh?
Yeah. And I'm sure decorating the house for a lot of family coming over. You host events when you have a house that is the size of Windsor Castle.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I don't know what else he expects.
We experienced that last year. Well, you can experience Mystic Beverage, mysticbeverage.com, made in Blount County, Alabama. For our friends watching on YouTube and Jocks TV, this is what the can looks like. It has a variety of flavors. They have the blood orange, the southern berry, the mango, and the watermelon. This is the mango, and I love the southern berry too. They're infused, but they're not sweet to drink, and they're low in calories. They're safe to drink. Well, most of them at work, like this one, the Lift Blend featuring CBD, CBG, Delta-9, the green coffee bean extract. It boosts both body and mind. Me and maybe our boss really enjoy these. They're a great pick-me-up any time of the day. I've already consumed one. There's been days before the show that I've consumed 3. Don't judge me, but they're really, really good. Whatever mood you're trying to get into, whether it's the Nirvanic, a smooth, calming experience, perfect for unwinding, the High Hills Delta-9 for a balanced and elevated vibe, or you can go with the Broadway, a broad spectrum CBD with a Delta-9 for the comprehensive wellness boost, the alcohol alternative. MysticBeverage.com. Find them at your local Piggly Wiggly, MysticBeverage.com. Make sure you tell them, if you talk to them, that Landrum from Three Man Front sent you.
So the hot topic today so far, the college football playoff rankings. I don't think that's a big surprise. The 3rd edition of the rankings coming out last night. We did have someone in the break that called in and wanted us to go over a certain situation with the SEC championship, and essentially the big question that is on everybody's mind really in the world of college football, and it's how is the committee going to, I guess, reward/punish teams for making a conference championship game. In the SEC's case, you're likely looking at a 10-2 Alabama, a 10-2 Georgia potentially finding their way to Atlanta to play a Texas team that would have 1 loss in the conference if everything plays out as the favorites as they stand right now. So would that 3rd loss knock an Alabama or Georgia out of the college football playoff? The reality of the question is we don't know, right? Because we haven't gone through this yet. This is the first year of the 12-team playoff. I will add in this is something that Ward Emanuel, the head of the playoff committee, added last night when they were unveiling the rankings. He was asked about a potential 3-loss SEC runner-up or conference champion runner-up and how the committee would view that team. And he said, quote, "We have a lot of value for teams that make a conference championship game. Playing 12 games and then making your conference championship game is a very valuable data point for the committee."
And what they have to be careful of, because they're, whether they admit it or not, they're trying to stay in the good graces of the SEC and the Big Ten.
They are.
And we know corporately how many dollars are tied to those events and how much they mean, not only to TV, but to their corporate partners. It would be a horrible precedent. And just unless you had, like I was mentioning with Chris Stewart when he joined us, if for some reason a team got blown out 56-7 and you lost key players in that game, and you just didn't look the same moving forward. If you were neck and neck with another team that had, if we went blind reserve, very comparable, then I could see them maybe doing it. And I think a lot of people would still be okay with it and they would see it as justified. But it is hard for me to fathom, especially the way that they're valuing 2-loss SEC teams right now. You get 2 of those teams facing off in Atlanta, that they're going to ding 1 and they're going to vault somebody else who is sitting at home. That's bad news for Tennessee fans, because right now Tennessee, unless something else shakes out, you're going to be left out of the playoff. I still maintain that it's going to be 4 teams from the SEC and they're not getting 5.
I agree with that. I think 4 is going to be the number. And, you brought it up earlier in the show. We've talked about it. All of us have, is the precedent that would be set by the committee if you take a team that you have said for the last 4 or 5, whatever weeks, this is a college football playoff team. There's no doubt in our mind. They are firmly in the field. And because they had to play an extra game against what you would assume would be quality competition, they are now going to fall out of the rankings. Now, let's say Texas and Alabama play in Atlanta for the SEC title. Texas wins 49-10. I think in that scenario, if you're Alabama, you probably don't deserve to be in the college football playoff because you shouldn't allow that to happen in those kinds of situations, right? So I think in that scenario, yes, you would have a 3-loss SEC runner-up that potentially got knocked out of the rankings. However, I don't think you're going to see a team stumble from, let's say, 8 to 13 because they lost to a number 3 Texas, especially if Texas is the team that makes it to the SEC championship game, because you're losing to a number 3 team in the country that the committee has, whether you like it or not, has told you they view as the best team in the SEC right now.
And I know we haven't seen it yet because this is the first year of all of this. And I know, wins matter, strength of schedule matters, the most deserving teams is the argument. But I feel like the committee, unless it's a blowout game like that, I feel like the committee can't look at an SEC runner-up and think they're not one of the best 12 teams in the country.
No, it's brand awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And we've seen it. And now it makes it easier to justify with the 12-team field as opposed to just a 4, because there was more of a fine line there and a lot more gray area. But it is still the unknown. And there's an uneasiness because you don't know how the committee is going to react. But based on what we've seen so far and how they're now valuing later into the process, SEC teams with 2 losses find it hard to believe that somebody gets left out. But make no mistake about it, embrace yourself. People from outside of the SEC or one of their teams was vying to get in and sitting on that bubble and the bubble burst, they're going to complain about it. It's never going to be a perfect system. Never. It will never be a perfect system.
No, because we're human beings, right?
We have to move beyond that. You don't have to like it, but just accept it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be ideal.
And as I, pointed out earlier, there's always going to be people saying, well, why don't we do the rankings this way? Why don't we use, take out the human element, let the computers crunch the numbers and come up with it. The results that you will get, regardless of if you have the College Football Playoff Committee, the AP poll, the coaches poll, the old BCS computer rankings, they are all incredibly similar. Now, okay, there might be one team that gets left out and is in another scenario, and that upsets that fan base. But generally speaking, I mean, when you've got 11 of the 12 teams right across all of the different ranking metrics, I would say that we can argue about which team is slotted where, but in terms of having the 12 most deserving teams in there, there's really not a lot to criticize outside of Tennessee. I understand why you would be upset if you're a Tennessee fan.
Well, and one of the teams that right now, percentage-wise, probably not going to end up in the SEC championship game, but I feel like they're solidly in the college football playoff. It's Georgia, and Dave is in Hoover, and he wants to talk college football playoff, and he's a big Georgia fan. Hey, Dave, how are you?
Yeah, I just don't get it. Miami's giving up 31.6 points per game. They got beat by an unranked team in Georgia Tech, which that's not really that bad of a team. They're actually pretty good for an unranked team. But so I look at Georgia's schedule from the time they played Alabama, week 3 to week 10, their conference schedule's done. They got no more conference. They're done.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do they have a terrible conference, I say terrible, it was a fun conference schedule. I loved it. At least you see where you are, you get battle tested. But the problem is when they condense your conference schedule like that, you run that gauntlet. Let's face it, against Ole Miss, they had 2 starters on the line out. Tate Ratledge tried to come in with that bootstrap surgery in the wet turf. He just couldn't go. His foot was weak. The backup guy only got 12 snaps in. You got 6 running backs in your running back room, and you're down to a walk-on who's in a boot and 2 other true freshmen. That's what happens, and I think that's exactly why you'll never go to a 9-game conference schedule with the, out-of-conference Power 5 rivalry games that you have.
Well, you make a good point there, and I think that right now, and I said it earlier in the show, Miami, and you have valid grievances with them being where they are based on their schedule and still having a loss, and that loss coming to Georgia Tech. But they are serving as a placeholder right now. Make no mistake about it, and we're probably just going to get the one team, and if that's them, if it's SMU, the automatic qualifier out of the ACC. And the benefit that Georgia has, you handle your business and what is it, good old-fashioned hate, whatever you call that rivalry against Georgia Tech. You're going to play a common opponent, and in Georgia handles their business, they beat them. That's going to be easier to justify if for some reason Miami was still there as an at-large.
And it's a crying shame that everybody's talking about they don't want to play in the SEC championship game because you don't know how this committee is how they're going to react. I mean, Georgia goes in and loses. I mean, you saw him last year, consistent number one team the whole year, hadn't lost a game in 3 years. You get beat by 3 points in the SEC championship game, and all of a sudden you go from 1 to 6. So if you got 2 losses and you make it the SEC championship game and you lose, there's a real good chance you ain't one of the top 12.
Dave, we appreciate the phone call as always. We'll continue with the phone calls. We'll get to a lot of your texts. Coming up at the top of the hour, big game this weekend that will not only impact the SEC, but potentially the offseason for the Auburn Tigers. Jason Caldwell from Auburn Undercover is going to talk about the temperament. 2.5-point, kind of a sketchy line there at Jordan-Hare at night versus the Aggies. 3-man front. We continue on Jocks 94.5. $11:53, already a first busy 2 hours here on the show. Landrum, Conrad, and Molly. Pat back with us on Friday. We digest another week of the college football playoff. We've talked to Chris Stewart about potential scenarios, people asking what happens in the SEC championship game to the loser, who right now would be presumably in, if that's Alabama. If they handle their business, win out the rest of the way, they're going to be in Atlanta, their opponent. Now, there's still some shaking out there. But it also comes back to, and this is not strictly other conferences. So while we just said what we said about Miami, I still think that if Texas loses to Texas A&M, there is an argument to be had by Tennessee. And if both of those teams have 2 losses, what are you telling me? Who has the better win? Would it be Tennessee or would it be Texas? The answer is short.
Well, yeah, it's Tennessee by a mile.
Tennessee.
There's not even, if that is the scenario, I don't really think, I think that's a situation as the committee, you look at that and go, okay, Tennessee's in, Texas is out.
The problem that you have with that scenario, though, is if they view them, okay, well, it's going to take more because we believe that Texas, and a lot of people do, even heading into the season, with the most talented team, top to bottom, had the best offensive line coming back. You got star power at your quarterback. Not that some of these other schools don't, but more well-rounded than Tennessee. Tennessee, on the offensive side of the ball, the defense has been there, but that will come into play, and that will hurt Tennessee, whether you like it or you don't. And there's already that brand awareness of Texas coming into the season. A lot of people picking Texas. This is going to be their year. They've been on top of the standings in the SEC. They had their one true test, and they failed it. But still, they're the placeholder for the SEC champion. That's going to be the debate. That's going to be an uncomfortable one. And I fear for the Tennessee fans. For some of you, that's, you're like, what? Why do you fear for them? But I hate it. I try to have empathy, because then that is going to be the conversation. Why are we not getting more credit for the win over Alabama, whereas Texas, at that point, their best win, Vanderbilt?
I was about to say it's Vanderbilt, or
you're going to say Arkansas on the road by 10?
Yeah, I mean, I would say
if they lose to Texas A&M.
If DJ Lagway had played, it would be what they did to Florida.
Different conversation.
Exactly, it's a different without him. So yeah, no, I mean, I would still say it's probably Vanderbilt. I think that's their most impressive win. And that's why I brought up the case with Indiana earlier. It's all right if we're so quick to knock on Indiana, which not saying that's fair or unfair, but if we're going to do that, we need to do the same thing to Texas, right? Because both teams play in the Big Ten and the SEC, where you just think, oh, well, whatever their conference is or whatever their schedule is, it must have been incredibly difficult. Now, it's not Indiana's fault that they are playing the bottom feeders of the Big Ten. It's not Texas's fault that their schedule has them playing a lot of the bottom feeders of the SEC. But guess what? It's also not Tennessee's fault, right? Like, you can't punish other teams that are deserving of getting in. Well, they played the schedule that was put in front of them, and okay, like, they didn't make the schedule themselves, but it's, you can't punish other deserving teams that have played difficult schedules with, well, it's not our fault that Texas had an easy schedule. Well, it's not Tennessee's fault either. It's not, any of these other teams that are deserving of getting in. It's just, it's unfortunate. It sucks, but it is what it is.
And for the folks that think, hey, this is all going to shake itself out, none of this matters right now, the picture will change. It most certainly will change. But why it's important right now to look at these and scrutinize these rankings that we get weekly from the College Football Committee, because they're telegraphing their mindset.
Yep.
And their train of thought and how they value teams right now. And then when you see a previously undefeated BYU lose a close game at home, you see how far they fell, and now is a one-loss team.
Mm-hmm.
They're setting the table. Jason Caldwell talking Auburn A&M next. 12 o'clock here on Three Man Front. Landrum, Conrad, and Molly. Pat back with us on Friday. Hope you're enjoying your post-college football rankings week. What would this be, week 3?
It would be week 3.
Last night, we've got 4 SEC teams solidly in. Bad news for Tennessee fans right now. If the playoffs started today or this weekend, your team would be out, but there's still some shuffling around, and you could always have a team that stubs its toe unless maybe it's the Texas Longhorns who have built-in space, and right now they are the placeholders in being the pseudo-SEC champion in the committee's eyes.
I just saw this. I just want to pass this along before we get to Jason Caldwell. So we have kind of been talking about how none of us really know how the committee's how things are going to play out. You brought up maybe they're setting up the table for some potential shifts here over the last couple of weeks. But we had the SEC coaches teleconference this morning, and Kirby Smart was asked about the playoff committee and what he thinks they're looking for when determining the 12-team field. This is what the Georgia head coach had to say. He said, quote, "I've repeatedly said I don't know what they're looking for. They can't define that, and it's not simple either. It's not, anybody could be on that committee and say, well, this is what we're looking for. This is our criteria, and there's so much that it overlaps things, and everybody debates it, and I don't have time to really waste energy on it. So I think it's more than your non-conference games and who you play." That was Kirby Smart talking about the College Football Playoff Committee, and even he, not confident that he knows what they're looking for.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin, we heard it from him earlier in the week, and those two trying to get their message out and maybe put away any kind of questions that may come up when we finally get that 12-team field. Jason Caldwell, he does a wonderful job. 25 years of covering the Auburn Tigers, a part of Auburn Undercover at ITAT. Jason on Twitter. He joins us on the Buyers Right Hotline. Jason, how are you this Wednesday afternoon?
I'm good, guys. Sorry, I'm out here walking towards baseball over here on campus, and when this wind's picking up, so I'm trying to hide behind a tree so y'all can hear me. So hopefully it's not too breezy.
Well, that's going all out and hiding behind the tree. I am hearing that maybe Butch Thompson and that roster for Auburn baseball, a lot of talent and some more pitching, and maybe looks a little bit different heading into the season than it did last season, Jason. Not to get into a baseball wormhole.
Yeah, obviously fall baseball. Long way to go till they get really.
Guess the tree got in the way.
Molly, we're going to put Jason on hold. It could have been a bird.
It could have.
Could have been a squirrel.
Could have been the eagle. I'm just saying, he's on campus. You never know.
Did he say that he was in the Raptor Center? He did not. All right, Jason, hopefully everything's okay. Continue with your thought quickly about Butch Thompson Auburn baseball.
Yeah. Obviously, they got their entire signing class in, and so talented group. This is a big physical group of young guys that you bring in some transfers. Sam Dutton on the mound, a kid from Rainbow City that started his career at LSU, and Tate Fisher from Florida. So it's a more talented roster. Obviously, if you're playing in this league, it's going to be a grind. But I think they're a group that has a chance to go out and compete for sure.
Jason, when it comes to football, and we were talking college football playoff rankings, but for the Auburn Tigers, if you're Hugh Freeze, in my opinion, you're trying to beat the best opponent you have in your tenure. And I still make the argument, you might disagree, that Cal last year in the way that they finished, and they actually went to a bowl game in week 2 in Berkeley, that is still his best win. You've had a lot of close calls. You've had some really good performances, but coming up short. It does seem like, and maybe it was fool's gold, but last week, what you saw with Peyton Thorne in the passing game, Cam Coleman and what we got, the defense continuing to trend in the right direction and being a really, really good group under DJ Durkin, that maybe the table is set and maybe the stars align for the Aggies coming into Jordan-Hare on Saturday night.
Yeah, I've been saying I thought this was a very winnable game for a couple of reasons. First one is that you look and they haven't played great on the road away from home. Texas A&M hasn't. They played their best football at home, which is most teams do. So they haven't been as good away from home. Auburn, other than the Georgia game, has given themselves a chance to win every one of these games. And so you start looking at those things, and then can you come in with a little confidence? Yeah, it's ULM, but they made some plays on offense and did some things. So. Maybe the biggest part of this one is that nobody will ever convince me that about 99% of the Texas A&M population isn't already looking forward to next week. It sure seems that way, and so you'll get people that say the right things, and you'll prepare. But if there's a game in the back of your mind, who knows how that goes? So I think this is a good situation for Auburn, to be quite honest.
Well, Jason, we did hear Mike Elko in his press conference earlier this week say we are totally focused on Auburn. So even the mental labs there from the A&M head coach, I think kind of plays into what you're talking about. So one thing I did want to talk about the offense from last week and the resurgence that they had. Again, it's against ULM, so it's going to be definitely a step up now against A&M and then Alabama to close it out. But one thing I thought was really interesting was Hugh Freeze after the game kind of being asked about the third down conversions and how well Auburn did in that area. Was it really as simple as just simplifying some of the play calling and simplifying the offense? Do you think that's the key to unlocking this offense now for the last 2 games of the season? Or was that more of just you're playing ULM, and so it's just maybe the lack of talent on the defensive side of the ball there that led them to their success?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think you think about it, having success on first down is huge. And when you have success on first down and you're in second and medium, second short, then it opens up the playbook and allows you to do some things. So I think that played a big part of that, where you're having success on first downs and creating some explosive plays. And so, yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. But I mean, I think sometimes simpler is better. As you say, hey, let's go let our guy go make a play, and you have Cam Coleman and Keandre Lambert-Smith and Malcolm Simmons and Jarquez Hunter. Those are guys you feel like you take your chances on making plays with. And so maybe just kind of going, hey, let's simplify it, get the ball in their hands and see what happens is sometimes the best recipe.
And for Auburn's case, Jason, obviously getting a win, having a chance going into next week's Iron Bowl of getting bowl eligible, but even more than playing in what some would consider a meaningless bowl game, winning one of these final 2, what a boost of confidence that could be for this program in the offseason heading into year 3. And there will be a lot of scrutiny on Hugh Freeze in that year with the talent that he should have amassed. But as far as recruiting, and you keep up with this and you follow it and you're in some of those conversations, we haven't seen a mass exodus, what we've seen from some programs in the past when they've fallen on hard times in the win-loss record. Hasn't happened yet for Auburn. Are you cautiously optimistic? Do you feel pretty firm that no matter what, no matter the result, that Auburn keeps most of this class? What should Auburn fans be expecting when it comes to signing day in early December?
Yeah, I think, these guys signed on and committed before this thing ever started. And so, they didn't really know what to expect. Obviously, it hasn't been what they had hoped for, or the coaches or anybody else. But I think they also see, as we talked about, they also see how close this. This team's record isn't as good as last year. I'm firmly convinced this is a better football team than they had last year. They just haven't had many breaks go their way to kind of get a couple of those wins over the top. But I think it's a better roster, and I think you'll see a better roster next year. So I think those guys, they bought into that to begin with, and I think you recruit guys that want to be the difference maker. And if you're recruiting guys right now that go, man, we're not going to be any good next year, then that's the wrong guy to recruit, because you want to recruit guys that go, I'm going to be the difference, and then being that way. And that's the guys they've got right now. I think they've got a bunch of guys that feel like they're the difference. So, will they lose guys? Probably. I think everybody in the country, you ask coaches right now, do you feel secure about your entire class? And every one of them would probably say not really, because of the world we live in. But I think they feel pretty good and should feel pretty good about keeping these guys mostly intact.
And obviously, and some people pointed towards, well, look how much they're feeding Cam Coleman the football. And Coach Freeze said in his press conference Monday that was just by design, and some of the things that Louisiana Monroe was doing and some of the checks that he had in the RPO system. But that does bring, the question into mind with some of those guys, that star power, maybe the lack of production entering last week. I know the coaches are conscious of it, but how much fear is there within that building that some of those guys opt to go somewhere else?
I mean, I think it's like like we just said, I think, you're going to have to recruit your own roster again, but these guys have continued to say the right things. They came in to be part of something else. And I think probably a lot of these guys understood that you're hopeful that it happens in year 1, but you're also pretty realistic in going, that, this roster is not where it needs to be able to compete for a championship yet. You'll be much closer next year and get a couple of breaks. You absolutely can. Get the right quarterback in, do some of those things. But I think they feel good about that too. I think these guys bought into a building process, and this has been part of that. And so I think you got to feel good about those guys sticking around too.
Jason Caldwell covers the Auburn Tigers for Auburn Undercover, joining us here on the Buyers Right Hotline on 3-Man Front. So, Jason, I wanted to talk about the defense here for a minute. I know maybe a small storyline for this weekend. Obviously, DJ Durkin facing his former employer in Texas A&M. But Auburn's defense this year has really impressed me, and they've turned out to be one of the better defensive units in the entire conference. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts, your assessment. I know there's still a couple games left to go, but of the job you think DJ Durkin's done with that defense this year.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty remarkable to look at that defense and to look at, especially because of, obviously the secondary gets a lot of attention when you look and you're starting a true sophomore at corner and KM Lee, a true freshman at corner, and Jay Crawford playing another true freshman, probably more than anyone at safety, and Caleb Harrison, a redshirt freshman, Sylvester Smith, and your top backup at corner is a freshman, DeMarcus Riddick and Malik Blockton, Amaris Williams. You're playing a bunch of young guys on that side of the ball, and they're executing defensively. And that's the thing you probably, as much as anything, you go, man, it's been great to see the job they've done. I think the one thing you look at still, and it was the question mark coming in, is do you have disruptors on the interior of the defensive line? And you don't have those guys, and you look, and consequently they play good defense, but they've only created 8 turnovers. And so you look at it and go, you haven't been as disruptive. You play good defense, but you haven't gone out and caused havoc. And I think that's the next step for them. Can you get there these last 2 games with this group? I think you'll have to manufacture some of that. But no, they've done a pretty darn good job.
With so much emphasis and scrutiny that's been put on Peyton Thorne in the quarterback position since Hugh Freeze arrived at Auburn, Jason, we've seen names that have been floated out there, and Hugh Freeze has talked about it. It's got to be the right fit and not wanting to go and pay $1 million, $1.5 million for a quarterback out of the portal. With all of that being said, and there's going to be so much put into year 3, and having more of those weapons on the offensive side around you, and hopefully a boosted up offensive line. What if you're a betting man, where are you putting your money on Auburn going and getting a high profile guy out of the portal and paying a lot of money for?
Yeah, I'm not a betting man, but if I would put all the chips in that regard if it was me. I think they're absolutely going to go get a 4 quarterback. I think you look at the roster and the way it's made up. The days, and I don't know that we'll ever see them again until something changes. I think the days of rolling a young guy out there and going, hey, there's going to be some ups and downs, but we feel like I just don't know that you can do that as a starter nowadays. I think you go get a portal guy and say, hey, look at the guys you're going to have a chance to throw to and hand the ball off to, and an offensive line that should be better. So I guess I would absolutely expect that to happen.
All right, Jason, we'll keep it on with the quarterback discussion. We got our first, a small sample size of Walker White against ULM. So what can you kind of tell us maybe about his development over the course of the season? Because, again, we heard early on doing really well in 7-on-7s, but he wasn't, it didn't seem like Hugh Freeze was ready to put him in game situations. Now here we are getting his first opportunity in a live game environment. How has he developed throughout the season, and is he going to be a big factor, you think, in the quarterback situation for next year, or is it more clear-cut, like you were just saying with Landrum, that no doubt about it, they're going to go get a veteran guy regardless?
Yeah, I think you'll go get a veteran guy, but you're also going to have a competition in the spring. Deuce Knight comes in, Walker, Hank Brown, whoever it is, you're going to open it up and see what happens. And, so I think we saw a couple of years at Alabama. Mac Jones was a guy that nobody expected to be a starting quarterback for Alabama, and then he steps up and makes plays and gets the job. So I think it'll be a quarterback battle. Walker will be involved, and physically he has everything you're looking for. Obviously didn't get much experience this year. Was on scout team for a lot of the fall, and we saw him on scout team yesterday when we had a chance to watch practice. So he spent most of the fall doing that. This spring will obviously be big for him as he jumps in and starts to get more of those reps with the offense.
Well, Jason, we know that Auburn fans, they're certainly paying attention to the last 2 games of the season, but they've also switched their attention, and why not, to Bruce Pearl and the Auburn basketball team. So far, the roster you would expect from Janai Broom and what you're getting from him on a night in, night out basis, but also the outside shooting and some of those guys acquired. You watched a lot of Auburn basketball. You've seen a lot of talented rosters. Where does this roster talent stack up in as far as team chemistry, Bruce, and what they do schematically? Where does it compare to some of these other past Tiger rosters that Auburn fans had such high hopes for?
Yeah, I think you look at it probably 1 to 10 or 11. This may be as talented as we've seen. You don't have Broom's a top tier guy in terms of college basketball. He'll be another All-American. He'll be one of those guys, be a multi-year All-American. I don't think he's a long-time NBA player, all-star type guy. Can he make it in the league? Yeah, I think he can, but I don't think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be a lottery pick. So you look at it and go, I think they just got a group of really good basketball players that have meshed together really well. I think that's the thing probably as much as anything. Yeah, guys kind of understand their roles already. Chaney Johnson has been kind of the really the key for me, this team. They needed him to step up and be that guy. So I think Chaney's been a good guy to step up and be a physical guy at the forward, gives you athleticism and running a court. And so they've gotten this kind of fed into those roles already. And that's what Bruce Pearl wants out of his teams. And this looks like a group that has done those things to this point.
So one more question, Jason, about the basketball team. So they already have the big win over Houston. I would say that's the best win in college basketball, even though the season's still early. Very impressed there. But now you go to the Maui Invitational. Oh, yeah, you get Duke when you get back from that. But looking at the Maui Invitational, you have Iowa State coming up in 5 days, a top 5 team there. And it looks like you might have to play North Carolina and UConn as well. So a brutal gauntlet potentially for the Auburn Tigers. What is your realistic expectation for the Maui Invitational? Are you expecting them to ultimately find themselves at the top of that bracket? Do you think a couple of wins is likely for Auburn? How do you see that playing out for them in Maui?
Yeah, I think you go out there and win a couple of games, then you'd have to feel pretty good about the situation, considering the opponents that you might face. Like you said, if you have to run through those teams in 3 days in Hawaii, that'd be pretty daunting task. But I think you look at it, and if this team went out there and won it, wouldn't surprise me at all. But I could see them winning a couple of games out there. Honestly, you look at it, and that's the key right now when you start talking about early season basketball games. Go play that top competition, win your fair share of them, and then at the end of the year, if you've done what you're supposed to do in conference play, then you'll be rewarded. We've seen that pretty consistently in college basketball, and I think that's something you can hang your hat on.
I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you here on a blowtorch signal, but I got to listen to you do some color for some baseball last year, and it was early in the season. And I told you at the time, I thought you did an absolutely wonderful job. It was very enjoyable to listen to. I am hoping that you will be made a part of that broadcast at some point or at different points this season.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I like it. We'll see what it holds. You can pass along and create a groundswell write-in campaign. Maybe I'll get a shot or two. But yeah, I like it. It's fun. I mean, obviously, I probably watch these guys as much as I do anything, and come out here probably a dozen times during the fall, and to get to know these guys pretty well. And that makes it pretty easy to talk about when you kind of get a little background and get a little backstory on these guys. So hopefully, especially with the basketball run probably making a run again, then maybe get a shot to do a little bit of early season game.
Well, hopefully after Saturday night, you're writing about an Auburn win over a quality opponent in Texas A&M. Jason, thank you. Thanks for making time as always. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, at ITAT Jason. They're on Twitter, the X, whatever you prefer. Joining us on the Buyer's Right Hotline, Buyer's Right Insurance. For all of your insurance, financial, and HR needs, it's Buyer's Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner.
Well, still to come, we have Molly's bold projections. We have my fantasy football corner.
No.
A little, well, not Pat Ponders, Molly marinates, as well as the worst thing I've seen. So a lot still to come as we continue on. This is the Wednesday edition of Three Man Front.
12:23. We had the worst thing I've seen, and that's coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. But the best thing that I have seen today has got to be the Navy uniforms. Molly, you got to tweet those out at the number 3 man front.
Oh, they are fire.
The Jolly Roger uniforms?
Yes.
Right?
I don't know what you call them.
They're quite nice. Quite stylish.
I got my jollies looking at that helmet. I want that helmet. They have so many different helmets that I would love to have in my collection. Yeah. But that one, ooh, at the number 3 man front. You can check it out there on social media, but they're
nice.
It is fire, as the kids say.
Yes. As the kids should only say. Yes.
Oh, that's a knock. I feel like you've said fire.
Oh, I do, and I hate myself every time I say it because I feel like I'm trying to be 17.
But see, when you say, as the kids say, it's okay.
My favorite is when, I don't know if it's you or Pat that says it, but whenever y'all say it was lit, that always makes me chuckle a little bit inside.
I think that's Pat.
That definitely sounds like a Pat thing. Because if you get in Pat's car, he's listening to the top 40 hits and stuff. He's keeping it. That blew me away the first time I got in the car with Pat, and I was like, "Is this what you listen to, or you think I listen to?"
That's his caffeine.
Yeah, when we carpooled for the Stallions game.
Yeah, I was like, "You can change it," and he was like, "No, this is what I listen to."
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, I don't even listen."
If
to this.
you hear me saying it's lit, it's the pilot light on a water heater, or it's some charcoal because we're about to smoke some Q.
There we go. That's an
glad
applicable.
I threw out charcoal before I said smoke and then finished with Q. But
yes,
yeah,
thank you.
How about our friends at Dobbs Ford? They're the newest Ford dealership in town. They're right there on Parkway East. I actually got to see Joey and Rachel and their son Austin, the Goshen family. They're the managing partners. They were here at Jocks 94.5 earlier this morning, and they were actually giving away some turkeys on another one of our sister stations. But they're just great people, and that's what they do. It's not just around the holidays, but they're just genuinely reaching out and trying to love on the people of Birmingham. It's not only the Goshen family, it's the entire staff there at Dobbs Ford. Not to mention, you're going to get top dollar for your trade. You're going to get total transparency throughout the process. There's not going to be any pressure sales, and they'll beat any competitor's price. Check out the F-150s. Great selection of those. The Broncos and the Broncos Sports, a Mustang or an Explorer, or a lot of other great options you have there at Dobbs Ford. DobbsFordBirmingham.com. DobbsFordBirmingham.com. If anything, go and meet these wonderful people and kick some tires, look around the lot. You're going to be glad you did. And make sure you tell them, and I say this on all of our sponsors and partners here on the show, but make sure you tell them that Landrum from Jocks 94.5 sent you and asked for Joey, and he is going to be the most positive individual you've ever met in your life, and you're going to enjoy your day.
Well, the college football playoff rankings continue to be the hot topic here. And we heard a little bit earlier in the show from Ward Manuel talking about BYU, who fell from number 6 to number 14, the big dropper of the week there in the college football playoff rankings. But let's hear what Ward Manuel had to say about Tennessee. And this is how the college football playoff committee is kind of assessing Tennessee after the loss to Georgia and comparing them to Alabama, Ole Miss, and the Bulldogs.
One, they just had a loss to Georgia. And they had the loss at Arkansas, but it's really splitting hairs. I mean, they have great offense, great defense. They play hard. The committee just has had a hard time. I mean, you're talking about 4 really good teams when you look at, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Tennessee. And I think the committee, we debated it, as I said earlier, quite a bit as it came down to how we saw those teams. But they have, beat each other at different times. And so we have to look at Alabama the last 3 games, particularly the 2 before they played Mercer. They won in dominant fashion. And we were really impressed with their win at LSU 2 weeks ago. So it is, it is close. There's a lot of conversations, and we'll continue to monitor the performance of all these teams as the season progresses and towards the end, actually.
So that was Ward Manuel talking about their assessment of, or the committee's assessment of Tennessee and kind of how they stack up against those other 2-loss SEC teams. And, that's maybe not what you wanted to hear if you're a Tennessee fan, but I thought, generally speaking, you could tell, again, I brought it up earlier, I think the committee doing what they're doing with Alabama is, I think them moving them past a Miami team should give you confidence that if Alabama does go to the SEC title game and lose a close game, that they are setting themselves up to not fall out of the top 12 and still be a college football playoff team. But I think they're also telling you that the consistency from Alabama was very important for them, right? Because they were impressed by Missouri. We heard that a couple weeks ago. Obviously impressed by what happened against LSU. But even a Mercer team, I get it. It's an FCS school. That's what should have happened if you're Alabama. But another week of that consistency and not falling into those bad habits we saw earlier in the year, I think is a big part of why Alabama has separated themselves now from not only Tennessee, who beat them head to head, but also Ole Miss and Georgia.
And I haven't heard, and maybe you guys have, I haven't heard a tremendous outcry from Tennessee fans yet. I've heard a little bit. But I think even Tennessee fans realize right now there's deficiencies, and it's not on the defensive side. If anything, it's the inconsistency on offense. And the first time it emerged after being so impressive and thinking, man, this Josh Heupel offense, they're going to put up record-breaking numbers. Think about what they did in Charlotte against an NC State team who at the time was ranked, beat the brakes off of them.
Mm-hmm.
What they did in the non-conference, but still it was eye-popping numbers. But then we started to see little bitty chinks. While they got a win in Norman, Oklahoma, offense didn't look quite the same as it did against those other teams. Then we got that game on that Saturday night in Fayetteville, and we saw what happened there. Unfortunately, you got the win over Alabama, but what has Alabama done since that point? They've won, and they've won convincingly, and they've done it over not the greatest of opponents in Missouri, but still you got a Missouri team that's ranked. We know that LSU has been fading, is fading now, but going into Tiger Stadium and beating them the way that they did, it's hard to put that out of your mind. But the fact that they just played a Georgia team who everyone agrees has deficiencies as well, and the second half of that game not being able to muster anything on offense, and the scoreboard reflected it, but a Georgia team that had been beaten by Alabama, a Georgia team that was soundly beaten by Ole Miss, and then that being the last true snapshot that this college football playoff committee is going to have before they have to decide, because Tennessee's not going to get another chance with the exception of Vanderbilt. And that's still going to ring rather hollow. No disrespect to Vandy. That's unfortunate. But that's the way but I don't know how many Tennessee fans right now would say, I feel really comfortable with the way we're playing, that give me a 12-team playoff and I like our chances.
No, I think they had accepted that this was very likely to happen. And even a lot of them, SC Mike, who's on the show a lot, he's a huge Tennessee fan. And even seeing him have the understanding and trying to talk to other Tennessee fans on social media of, hey, this is why Alabama is going to be ahead of them, because in every criteria, essentially, besides head-to-head, Alabama has an advantage. Now, I understand if head-to-head is the only thing that matters to you, I understand why that's frustrating, but I think a lot of them had kind of started to come around to that. I think the thing for Tennessee that's holding them back outside of, the obvious losses is you don't have that dominant win, right? And I think that's what the committee's holding on to. You don't have a 63-30 win against an Arkansas team, right? I know they lost to them, but you don't have that against any of the other lesser competition in the SEC. Now, maybe if you beat Vanderbilt by 40, maybe that starts to open some eyes for people. But you look at what, I know they didn't have Lagway, but what Texas has been able to do to, a team like Florida, what Alabama did to LSU and Missouri, what Ole Miss did to Arkansas, what Georgia did to Texas. We have seen all of those teams really dominate opponents at times this year in the SEC, and we haven't seen that from Tennessee. The Alabama win is huge, and it's a great win, one of the better wins in all of college football this year. But it was a close win in a sloppy game that I think the committee can look at and go, okay, that was Alabama not playing their best, Tennessee not playing their best, but Tennessee was the better team and deserved to win that day. But we haven't seen Tennessee after that game significantly improve. And I think that's ultimately what's held them back in the committee's eyes.
We'll continue to dissect what we got with the rankings last night. But if you want certainty and you want multicolored markers, bubble letters, a whole lot of energy
and glitter,
and glitter. Molly's bold projections, she works hard on them, and she's doing this for you. This is where you can book your bowl trip, right? You plan your vacation.
That's right.
This is like it's written in blood. Molly's bold projections, next. Little Rick Astley coming back. I said something totally different. Glad I didn't. Save that for the podcast.
What was on your mind in the break?
Well, nothing. I was sitting here watching J.J. Watt give a great analysis with the volume down and no closed captioning. I'm just trying to imagine what he's saying.
Great breakdown of
it's really good.
The Steelers and Ravens.
Speaking of that, we do have Conrad's Fantasy Corner coming up at 1:15. Coming up momentarily, we are going to have Molly's bold projections. Do want to tell you about Rambler Sports Bar and Grill. They're at the Finnick. They're open for lunch today, and they roll all the way through Sunday Night Football. If you're an NFL fan, that is the place to be, not only on Thursday nights, but also on Sundays. NFL Sunday Ticket, Red Zone, college football. Now that we're creeping into basketball, Alabama fans, you're going to go to Legacy Arena tonight to watch the Tide take on the Fighting Illini. Illinois fans, you're invited as well. The giant video boards, the projector screen, all the great action, you're going to find it there. And they've redone it. They redid it right before fall football started. And it's amazing. Optimum sound, great environment, safe place to be, wonderful food and drink. It is Rambler's Sports Bar and Grill. They're at the Phoenix, 1630 2nd Avenue South. Open lunch today all the way through Sunday Night Football. Make sure you get in and see them.
Well, we do this time each and every week. The most entertaining and the most accurate bowl projections you will find anywhere in the college football world. It's time for Molly's Bowl Projections.
Analyzing the latest college football playoff data and expertly breaking down the matchups for the postseason. This is Molly's Bowl Projections.
Come on, Molly.
Like I said, the glitter pens were brought out this week.
Are you in the mood to maybe do different accents when called upon?
Ooh, I can try.
It's always a fun
yeah,
thing.
I can try.
We like. There it is. Okay. All right. Where are we going first?
Well, of course, we're going to start with the college football playoff, and we're going to have my bracket, obviously.
The one that matters.
The one that matters. So let's start with the number 12 team.
Ooh, who do we have?
BYU.
Okay.
Going up against Ohio State, which I think is the same.
Yes.
I have a little bit of a switch around in mind, but I think that one's the same.
Yeah. Early reports last night, Ohio State would be a 21-point favorite
I can see that.
in the college football playoff. Just saying.
I'll take BYU and I'll buy the half.
All right, coming up next. 11 Windiana
Ooh,
headed down to Tuscaloosa.
I like that. Windiana on the road in Tuscaloosa.
At Alabama.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you look, they're probably going to win 11 games.
Oh, I know. It's just
So they're 11 Windiana.
It's just, I like that. It's
And
just,
they're ranked 11.
we had, a week ago, Alabama would be going to Bloomington, and now we might have Indiana going to
No, I
Tuscaloosa.
switched it.
Okay, I like it.
Isn't it crazy? Because I'm guaranteed a ticket if Alabama traveled to Bloomington, but I probably couldn't get a ticket
Well,
if they went to Tuscaloosa.
We'll see what we can do.
Sell a kidney.
You could do that.
It's always an option.
I need both.
Coming
What's
up
your problem?
next, I have number 10, Notre Dame, headed down to Oxford, Mississippi.
Ooh.
Taking on Ole Miss.
Okay.
I like it.
And last in the semifinal, I wonder what the line would be for this one. I have Georgia going to Happy Valley, taking on Penn State.
Well, Molly, we can actually tell you what the line on
Wasn't
that
that
one
the
would be.
1.5 one?
Yeah.
1.5?
See, that just, I don't believe that.
Easy.
You like
money.
Georgia more than that? You like Georgia by a touchdown?
Potentially.
Okay.
I would be loading up on Georgia.
The only thing there is Penn State, they're pretty solid on defense.
They are.
And if Carson Beck goes and has a brain fart for 4 quarters, that's
a good point.
That's a different story.
Well, maybe he doesn't like being chilly.
It is cold up
Have
there.
we considered that?
I bet his girlfriend would still say he is a cutie even when he's cold.
All
All right. Let's move on to the quarterfinal.
Oh, Sid.
So obviously I have Oregon, number 1. And they would play Georgia, Boise State, and the number 4 seed.
Okay.
And they would play Ohio State, which we talked about earlier.
Another 21-point spread, probably.
Oh, yes. Next we have, and I think this will change, but just for this week, this is where they're at.
This is what that's
Texas.
all you had to work with.
Exactly. Texas,
Okay.
taking on
Oh, yeah.
Lane Kiffin. So you got Sark
There we
versus
go.
Kiffin.
I like
Battle of the former Saban OCs.
it. I like it.
I like the drama.
Man, can Lane beat 2 elite programs in one season?
Mm-hmm. I would love to see that happen. That game, at least.
Oh, that game.
Yes, Texas Ole Miss.
Okay.
In the postseason.
She doesn't want to see him win. She just wants to see him have a shot.
Yeah, have
She
a
doesn't want
shot.
Pat to be too happy.
No, I mean, you're a Missouri sympathizer, but
I
you're
am.
not a Rebel sympathizer.
No, I'm not.
No.
No. I
Not
just like
at all.
drama. You know.
Molly is a very southern
drama.
name, though.
Okay.
You're saying you would find a lot of Mollies in Oxford? Is that what
I
you're
could
saying?
just say if you went to like a, I could see Molly in an antebellum dress.
Okay. I don't
know,
really
we-
know that many Mollies.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Well, it's because you don't go to Oxford.
That is
Yep,
true.
They're all over the place there.
And last but not least, Miami versus Alabama. This is the Bama Hater Bowl.
Sign me up, baby.
Bama hater.
Give
bowl.
me that. We need that. That would be such an incredible. I would love that. That'd be so much fun on the show.
You feel better about it now the way that Alabama's defense is playing than you probably would have.
Oh, yes.
Weeks ago?
Yes.
Absolutely. Cam Ward is incredible, and I think he would cause plenty of problems for Alabama. But even I'm just talking about the lead up to it and getting Bama Hater involved, and so many people would be on Alabama's side. Can't wait. Hope it happens.
And now in the semifinal, we have a rematch. We have 2 rematches.
Oh.
Well, one from last year, but besides. So you have Oregon, Ohio State.
Okay.
And then you have Texas and Alabama.
Yeah, there it is. Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then the national championship, I think if that were to happen, it would probably be Oregon, Alabama. Because I think Alabama could beat Texas.
And the winner of that game would
I don't pick the winner. I just pick the
be-
game.
Okay.
I know who you would pick, though.
Yeah, Oregon by a touchdown.
Well, let's get into some more bowls, shall we?
Let's do it.
Because we have a new team coming into this week's bowl slate. That's the Florida Gators.
Oh, all right, Billy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
They got
one
Florida
win away,
State.
and
yeah.
they got Florida State.
Yeah.
So I have
if
them.
an alligator could talk, how would it sound?
Okay. Yeah.
That's her voice.
It's the claw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
She always
Okay.
goes claw.
Well, speaking of the Gators, I have them in the Gator Bowl
Okay.
against SMU.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to put them in the Gator Bowl because
That could be an interesting game with
Gator.
Lagway and going up against that SMU team. I mean, Florida's got some juice now.
Boy, Brett Lashley's going to be so disappointed if that happens.
Yeah, that would be quite the fall from the playoff to a 6-6 Florida team. Yeah.
coming up next, you can't spell citrus without UT. So I have Tennessee and Illinois.
Oh,
The Big Ten rankings are tough. I will tell
such
you
an
that.
orange. I mean that, but it's just like what Tennessee, Iowa last year, where it was.
Right.
Oh,
that game.
I'm gonna have to watch this. Okay.
Next for the ReliaQuest, Texas A&M versus Iowa.
Okay.
See, it's Iowa though.
Yeah, I know it's.
But they kind of have an offense this year.
I think it'd be
More
competitive.
You
so
said
than
that, I just imagine myself walking into a portalette that hadn't
Again, you just take a look at those Big Ten standings and you'll be shocked. The Big Ten is a mess this year. Well, anyway, the Music City Bowl. I have South Carolina. I really want them in the Music City Bowl.
Okay.
Against Minnesota. The Golden Gophers.
Okay. Hey, shot at 10 wins for Shane Beamer potentially.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
in South Carolina, if they finish 9-3, that would change. They would get a better bowl game
They
than
would.
that. But
That would be a team too that would be. I'm not saying that you could argue for both sides, but they finish 9-3. I think they're going to feel they have a good argument to be considered for the college football playoff, and they're not going to get in though,
Yeah.
and they'll take it out on whoever they play in a bowl game.
Exactly.
But what is your best win going to look like at that point?
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean your best win is going to be not Texas A&M
Texas
blowing
A&M.
them out by 24, which is good, but you would then probably need Texas A&M to
Loss to
beat
LSU,
Texas to help you
even
out.
with the circumstances in that game, that
and Alabama. Yeah, I mean
getting
they're
beat
still losses.
27-3 by Ole Miss.
Yeah,
So basically, what I'm telling you in your theory is no.
fun theory.
Beamer's done a heck of a job this year.
Well, this next bowl, this is for our buddy E, our resident Vandy fan. Because I have Vanderbilt in the Las Vegas Bowl against Washington.
Okay, that would actually be a pretty good game. Will Rogers, well, he'd probably opt out, but
probably not.
maybe Will Rogers getting another shot at an SEC team before he hangs it up. That'd be cool.
Put Diego Pavia under lock and key in Vegas. He might not show up. Something tells me he's not meeting curfew.
And in the Liberty Bowl, Kansas State versus Missouri.
Okay,
Bobcats.
again, a good game, a rematch of an excellent game from last year.
Mm-hmm.
I was just there. Buy your tickets now because one section of the stadium is gone.
Okay,
Alrighty.
good to
But
know.
it's going to be really nice when they finish it.
Yeah.
And back in
Sure
the
will be.
Birmingham Bowl, Georgia Tech. I've been
Yep.
keeping them in there. And Arkansas.
Okay, that'd be a good game.
That'll win for me.
Yeah. And I still have Nebraska in the Dukes Mayo Bowl.
Oh,
You're
bless her
holding on.
I'm holding
I
on to
understand.
it. I really am. Pop-Tart Bowl would be my favorite bowl.
Dylan Raiola guaranteed that y'all were going to win this weekend and get to a
He
bowl game.
did.
Can we put mayonnaise in your hair if they go to a bowl game?
Absolutely not.
Some fan you are.
I'm a fan.
Do we still have the Pop-Tarts bowl?
Pop-Tart is ACC and Big 12. So I guess Pitt and what about Clemson? Well,
No.
Maybe
no,
like
I mean for the ACC.
Clemson and
K-State.
Arizona State.
Yeah.
Or, something like that.
Colorado. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I asked that because did you see the big news about the Pop-Tarts
About
Bowl?
the 3 mascots?
Yeah, they're going to have 3 different Pop-Tarts, and the MVP of the bowl game gets to pick which flavor they get to eat.
That's awesome.
I would jump on board the Pop-Tart train once they make one that's savory.
Ugh. Like a Hot Pocket?
Give me some eggs and bacon in that
No,
thing.
absolutely
Oh,
not.
You're freaking.
Yeah, like a Hot Pocket, but flat.
Well, just get a Hot Pocket. And squish it.
Ugh.
Okay, maybe not.
But yeah, those are my balls.
Isn't that just a toaster strudel? I mean, I guess those are still sweet, but it's basically a Hot Pocket.
Yeah. I'm sure that makes
You could have
savory
gravy icing
ones.
on the outside.
Oh,
See,
no.
that did it for you guys.
Yeah, I
You
don't
know
want
it would.
that. That's
It
gross.
sounds horrible. All right, thank you, Molly, for the bold projections
Thank you.
and holding out hope for Nebraska. And
Hey.
you'll change your mind on the mayonnaise. We know that Waffle Stomper, he would take me up on that bet. Same situation.
Oh, yeah.
That's easy for you.
Oh, yeah.
We hadn't forgot about the stinky fish, by the way. We continue 3-man front here on this Reaction Wednesday to the college football playoff rankings. A lot of your texts, we'll get to those as well. Jocks 94.5. 12:53 here on Three Man Front. The text line is open, and my request for something savory, a Pop-Tart that's savory. Apparently, our friends at Jimmy Dean have responded. They have the toaster pop-ups. Sausage, scrambled eggs, inside of a nice savory pastry.
I would eat that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're pretty good.
Yeah.
But when I said it, you didn't like it.
Well,
Is
you
it
were
just
talking
because
about
I
a
associate it
Pop-Tart
with
with
Pop-Tart?
gravy icing and stuff. That's,
Okay.
that's strange.
A little bit. Well, flu season is ramping up, so make your home healthier with Trane's Clean Effects Home Air Cleaner. It removes up to 99.9% of airborne particles, including those that cause virus. It's 100 times more effective than standard air filters and 8 times more effective than HEPA room filters. So find a dealer near you at Trane.com.
All right, let's go to the text line, guys, really quickly. We appreciate all of your interaction every single day on the text line. We have a ton of texts that we have not been able to get to, and it covers a lot of college football playoff rankings, but also some other things as well. 205-834-9450. If you missed Molly's bowl projections, she just went through her latest bowl projections. So start maybe calling the travel agent, looking at flights, checking hotel availability.
Especially if you're a Vandy fan.
Especially if you're a Vandy fan, going
Just
to
saying.
Vegas.
She had Alabama in the national championship, beating Oregon by 28, I think.
Something like that.
Drake asked the question, did Molly give Florida a bowl kiss? Yes, she did. And Florida would be facing off in the Gator Bowl versus Rhett Lashley and SMU. I pay attention.
It's just funny that the reality for Billy Napier could be beat Florida State and go to a bowl game, or lose and get fired. That could be what the final game of the season ultimately comes down to. We'll see.
Wild Hands Robinson says, Molly believing in my Gators. Woo! Lagway is a dude.
I really do.
Lagway's good.
No, we're going to have our Better to Forget It, a special edition coming up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That is a dangerous, dangerous game for Ole Miss.
Yes, it is.
You know where I'll be this weekend, too? I'll be at that game. I'm going to the swamp.
Oh, are you?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We just planned it, yeah.
Really?
My mom went to high school with Billy Napier's cousin.
What?
Yeah. And they're super good friends.
Are you sitting in the Napier box?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I don't think so, though. No. But yeah, all year they've been like, you need to come to a game with us. And so.
This would be a good one to go to.
I'm about to say, this is our one somewhat free weekend. So.
Okay. That's awesome. You get to go on another cool trip to watch college football on a Saturday.
Pat's going to be jealous.
He really is.
Have you told Pat yet?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, we
this
don't tell him
text,
he's not here.
Wait a minute. For weeks, you guys have been talking Vandy up, and now you say if Tennessee beats Vandy, it's no big deal. No, it's a big deal. It's just, is that going to carry more weight with Tennessee as a 2-loss team and ending the season with a win? And then in turn, you would have Texas falling to Texas A&M on the road and then being a 2-loss team and comparing the resumes.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's not a big deal.
No, it would be a quality win over Vanderbilt, but it's, again, when you have other top matchups and, it's just, is that going to ultimately be the thing that moves the needle for Tennessee? Probably not.
And Vandy losing at LSU will not help anybody that has beaten Vandy.
No, but if they do beat LSU, it gets more interesting.
It does. More of your text, more fun on the way. Coming up the next hour, we got Molly marinates, Conrad does creepy things in the corner, and the worst thing I've seen.
1 o'clock here on your Wednesday afternoon. Three-man front. Conrad Landrum and Molly with you for one more hour before handing you off to the Paul Feinbaum Show. Pat Smith taking some well-deserved time off. He will be back not tomorrow, but Friday. So you will have the three of us with you again tomorrow. And the big topic today, had a lot of discussion, a lot of great reactions from y'all. Going to continue to read those texts and hear from you on the phone line. But the College Football Playoff Rankings Week 3 edition, I guess, whatever you want to call it, the third edition of the College Football Playoff Rankings this year. Some big movement in a couple of areas. BYU falling from number 6 down to number 14. Alabama moving up 3 spots from number 10 to number 7 and leapfrogging Miami in the process. You also have Tennessee as the new first team out if the playoff were to start today, because again, top 5 conference champions get an auto bid. So even though BYU is currently not ranked in the top 12, they would still get an automatic bid as the highest ranked member of the Big 12. So a lot of reaction there. A lot of people still trying to figure out, sort through what the playoff committee said. There were some other comments made on the ranking show last night that I want to get to here in a minute that sparked a little bit of controversy. But just kind of as a recap, Landrum, was there anything that took place last night for you that shocked you or made you maybe change the way that you think the committee works?
No. And not that it was reassuring, because based on the group of people that we have in that room this year, I felt like they were certainly going to be watching the games. There's been years past where it's what are you watching? How could you have possibly come to that outcome? But typically it's around this time leading up. I think what we've learned about the committee, and last night, if yes, the picture is going to change because we have more meaningful games. Some teams that are currently there might not be there. There might be one or two that find their way in there. But how the committee is valuing certain teams from certain conferences. And you are reassured if you're an Alabama fan. You're reassured if you're a Georgia fan. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, I would feel really, really solid, and Texas for that matter, that you're going to be in the college football playoff. The tricky part is with Alabama, and you go to Norman, you're a decided favorite against an undermanned Oklahoma team. You're a 15.5-point favorite, and I realize anything can happen in the Iron Bowl. Just look at last year. But playing that game at home, even getting a 1-point win, a 2-point win over Auburn, they're not going to ding you. Playing it as an SEC championship game, have to believe that where Alabama is and moving up in the rankings last night, that a third loss in a championship game that's not going to ding them. And I'll go ahead and make the prediction. If it's Alabama and Texas head-to-head, based on what I've seen from Texas and Alabama, I would take Alabama. And it's not crimson-colored glasses. I saw what Georgia was able to do. And, yes, that was a one-game sample size. But since then, I've been waiting for Texas to really impress me, to be the Texas team that we thought. Now, they were impressive against Michigan, but everybody else has been impressive against Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
They were impressive against Sla Monroe, UTSA. But then I think back to even games that they won. I think back to the game versus Mississippi State, where you look around and you go, wow, what's happening?
Yep, you let them hang around for a while.
That's not dominance.
Nope.
We know it's a rivalry game, and it's really a really big game to the two fan bases. But going to Reynolds Razorback Stadium and an Arkansas team that just seemed like yesterday we saw get creamed by Ole Miss and coming in there. And so you're selling me on this Texas offense, which we didn't see against Georgia. Yeah, Georgia dominate them. And then to go and only put up 20 points against Arkansas, that concerns me. And I feel like they're getting a lot of value, and they are getting looked at, and it's based on preseason, what we expected from Texas, and maybe their ceiling is higher, and maybe they're more talented than any other team in the country. The problem for me is they haven't played like it as of yet. And when are we going to get that? So if you ask me, though, right now, do I put Tennessee or Texas based on upside? I would still have to lead Texas.
I think that's fair, and I would agree with you on that. Again, I brought it up though with Texas as you better not lose to Texas A&M at the end of the year, because then that is going to start a real conversation. Because if you look at the resume for Texas, then it's not going to stack up against even a Tennessee, right? Because Tennessee has that win over Alabama, which continues to look better and better for them. Whereas I don't think the committee is going to sit there and go, man, let's look at what Texas did to that Florida team late in the season when they were on their third string quarterback and they blew them out. That's not going to impress anybody. You don't have that big marquee win that the other teams in the SEC that are in this conversation have. So Texas is certainly, people are starting to notice. I know you've been on this train for a while, but it seems like now more people are starting to really give credence to the fact that, okay, maybe Texas, does have room to improve. They do have something left to show, not only the committee, but college football fans in general, before we're ready to just go ahead and crown them as the best team in the SEC, even though they only have one loss. Another team that we talked about a lot last week, it's generated a lot of conversation, is Indiana, who currently sits there undefeated. They have a big, big game this weekend against Ohio State. You win that game, Landrum, I think all the doubters are silenced. All questions are gone. Indiana clearly very deserving of not only being in the 12-team field, but being, in my opinion, number 2 right behind Oregon in all of college football. But I wanted to bring up something that...
But by the way, can I just intercept real quick?
Yes.
By the way, what I've seen from Penn State, what I've seen from, or haven't seen, even to an extent, Ohio State, I'm not really wowed by either one of those teams either. So they're in the same boat as Texas for me. But that's why I think this year's potential field, and the way that this plays out in a tournament-style bracket is going to be so entertaining.
Yes.
And why I'm all for it. If it shapes up this way every single year, I'm all about it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that one. But okay, so last night on the College Football Ranking Show, of course, you have Kirk Herbstreit, Greg McElroy, Joey Galloway, some other members there that kind of go through and talk through the rankings with Reese Davis. And there was one particular comment that really seems to have struck a nerve with a lot of just general college football fans. So let's listen in. Last night, this is Joey Galloway on the ESPN College Football Playoff Ranking Show last night, talking about an idea he has for Indiana going into their game against Ohio State.
They can't go any higher.
They are behind a one-loss team.
They have a chance to go on the road and prove what they are. Now, honestly, if we believe in what our metrics are saying, if I'm Indiana, I don't know if I'm playing Rourke against Ohio State. We've seen what happened to Florida State last year, Jordan Travis. What could keep Indiana out of this? Getting their quarterback hurt. We've seen it happen to Florida State last year, having not played anybody.
Or losing by 30.
If you look at 3, 4, and 5, Texas, Penn State, and Indiana, they literally have played nobody between all 3 teams. The toughest team in that is Vandy. So a lot of this that we're looking at is eye test.
That is a great message, Joey, to send to your team if you're Kurt Cignetti. And I'm sure when he heard that comment, when he watched that, and somebody probably showed it to him, he actually vomited.
I hope he did. I wish we were on Sirius XM right now so I could actually say and use some of the words that I would like to use. But that is some of the dumbest crap I've ever heard in my life.
Can you imagine that conversation? Cignetti calls Rourke into his office and he goes, "Hey, check this out. I know this is our biggest game of the year, and we've circled this game. We said, hey, this is when we prove to America that we're worthy of being on the stage. But as it turns out, after last Tuesday's rankings, we feel like we're pretty solidly in, and we don't want to risk you going out there and getting hurt. So you're not going to play. We're going to play." I'm trying to remember his name. He was the transfer quarterback, started his career, but all he did was win a game.
Hey, what about Curtis Rourke and maybe he wants to go play in the NFL. Don't you think putting some good film or having some good film out there against Ohio State would do wonders for him and what his future could look like?
Conrad, are you good with Ty Simpson instead of Jalen Milroe? If you're assured, hey, even if you lose the Iron Bowl, you're assured of that. No, you're not.
No, it's stupid. And look, I understand what he's saying of last year. There was a precedent set where if your quarterback gets knocked out like Florida State's did, that they can leave you out of the playoff. Granted, that was because their backup quarterback situation was bad and they looked horrible in the games that they played. They continued to win, but they did not look good. They looked egregious on offense, and it was their defense that kept them in games. You know what else can get you knocked out of the playoff, Joey Galloway? I'm sorry. If I'm the committee and I see a team that says, hey, we don't want to go out and compete against the toughest team on our schedule and try to prove to you that we deserve to be one of the big dogs in college football this year, we're going to sit our quarterback. You should immediately be eliminated from consideration. Don't even send them to a bowl game, because that is showing you do not want to compete. You do not respect the integrity of the sport, and that would be embarrassing. And the fact that, in my opinion, Joey Galloway got up on national TV and said that is ridiculous.
No, I agree with you.
Ridiculous.
If the committee wanted to send a message to future teams that thought, or coaches that thought about doing this, no, we're not. We're not going to set that precedent. We absolutely leave them out. Stupid.
Yeah, we think we're becoming more like the NFL. If you do that, you're becoming more like the NBA, where their star players play half the season.
And that's worked out for them ratings-wise, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 800-239-WJOX, 205-834-9450. Taven Jackson, backup quarterback.
Okay, there we go.
Yep.
Thank you.
He was solid against Washington, too.
Yeah, he wasn't bad.
This one coming in, Landrum, in regards to rankings, how do we know Indiana is not as good as their ranking? May not have the 5 stars like Texas, but it's about execution, right? IU can't help the schedule. Tennessee has one decent win. Texas, well, sincerely, Hugh Brain Freeze. Thank you there from the state of North Carolina on the Jocks 94.5 app. No. And look, they've handled their business, and even more so than BYU. And I'd have to go back and look at every score. Now, the exception being a 5-point win over Michigan. But at that point in the season and before the bye week, you kind of mucked it up in the second half and didn't get a whole lot done. You still won the game.
Indiana's beaten everyone else by double digits, though.
The thing that I think, and this is not something that is measurable, you can't look at this on paper, but watch that team. And if you've been around competitive sports, whether the high school level, college level, look how they respond to their head coach. Look how they play, and they play for one another. I'm not saying that this is an indictment on every other team in college football. There's other programs that play this way. But against a team like Ohio State, you got a bunch of independent contractors.
Mm-hmm.
That roster is made up of a lot of guys that they brought in to be fixers.
Yeah, they were chasing a dollar.
Kurt Signetti had to bring a lot of guys with him from James Madison and other places because his roster was absolutely decimated. And what he has done, with no disrespect to them, with less talent, and how he's done it against some of these other common foes that we've seen Big Ten teams play, has been nothing short of remarkable. I do think, I don't know, we will see how they match up against Ohio State. But right now, even with a loss, and I know you're going to hate this, but even with a close loss at the Horseshoe, I still feel like Indiana is worthy of being in the college football playoff. And some of that is absolutely biased.
Okay, but I agree with you. If they go and show they can compete and they lose by 1 score to Ohio State, I'm not necessarily going to hold that against them. Now, would it be great if they won and then we have no doubts? Yes. But show me you can compete against the highest competition, and I have no problem with you being in the playoff. I think they deserve to be in the top 12 right now. I don't know if I would agree with them being in the top 5, but they certainly deserve a seat at the table as it stands right now. However, as that texter brought up, I said this earlier, again, yes, you play the schedule that's put in front of you, and that's all you can do. And I'm not trying to take that away from Indiana or Texas or Penn State or any of these schools that don't have the best strength of schedule. But you also can't, that's not somebody else's fault, right? You can't say, well, it's not Indiana's fault that they have an easy schedule. Okay, but it's not Tennessee's fault that Indiana has an easy schedule and is able to kind of cakewalk through a lot of it. I'm not trying to take away what some of these teams have done, but if you're going to say, well, you got to play the schedule in front of you, yeah, you do. And sometimes the cards don't fall in your favor with your schedule, and that's just part of college football.
In my opinion, it could change based on the result that happens in Columbus. But right now, I would take IU. I'd take IU over Tennessee, neutral site. I'd take them. You disagree with me? That's fine. Push back. That's okay.
That'd be a coin flip for me. It'd be
I would
close.
take IU over whoever it is out of the ACC right now.
Yes. I'll give you
SMU or Miami. I'll take IU.
Yeah, I'll take them over anybody from the Big 12.
I'm there with you.
Would you take them over? See, personally, for me right now, I would much rather have Indiana in the playoff than Penn State. Now, I know it's not coming down to one or the other, but I definitely think Indiana is better than Penn State.
I'm with you. And that's what makes it so much fun.
Yes.
You can't tell me I'm wrong. I can't tell you you're wrong.
No, it's all opinions.
Yeah, and it will happen on the field. And guess what? It's going to be decided on the field. We actually have games at this point in the season where we're not circling, well, Ohio State, they haven't played anybody this year, and they're going to get Michigan, and we'll see who wins that rivalry game to decide who goes to the Big Ten championship game, and then the winner of that, most likely, depending on the year, last year Michigan or Ohio State most years, that team will be one of the four teams. Now we're talking about seeding, and then we're talking about potentially being left out of the college football playoff. At least this year, we got a one year sample size, but so far in the way that's shaping up, this is everything you could have hoped for if you were in favor of a 12 team.
I absolutely agree with that. Anybody that thought this was going to water down the regular season, who knows? There may be seasons where it appears that way, but for this one, this is a pretty heck of a good way to start off the 12-team playoff.
Listeners want to comment on Joey Galloway and his comments last night on the college football playoff ranking show. Let's go to Greg. He was on the set with Joey.
Hey, man. Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you, Greg?
I'm doing good. I'm glad y'all brought that up because I had to reverse that and listen to that again. That comment he made was the most moronic comment I have ever heard.
I couldn't believe he said it.
I had to do a double take. And as far as another thing, is my little pet peeve, I guess, right now, is everybody saying that that's the conference schedule they're dealt with. I think everybody in college, especially all the top leagues and conferences, should play at least one out-of-conference tough game. I don't care if they play one high school game or whatever, but everybody should play a tough game to even be considered for the playoff. Don't schedule two or three little baby scout teams. I mean, even high schools do that. I know 5 and 6A schools that are really getting really tough areas that they're out of the region games. They schedule 6 and 7A schools that are powerhouses to see where they stand.
Well, there's a couple problems with that, though, Greg, and understand the logic in what you're saying, but some of these conferences, and now with more parity and it being more of a coin flip week in, week out, we're not just seeing it in the SEC. To some extent, we're seeing it in the Big Ten, but we're certainly seeing it in the ACC. We're seeing it in the Big 12. And then you have to schedule so far in advance. So you go out and you select a whoever, and at the time they're rolling.
Well, look at Texas and Michigan this year.
Texas and Michigan, prime example. That was going to be all they needed. We wouldn't even be talking about Texas. Texas could lose to Texas A&M, and it's not even a valid discussion because we're talking about them going on the road and dominating Michigan for 4 quarters in the Big House. But now look at Michigan and what they've turned into.
Most of the time when you schedule games like that, you're looking at what they've done in the past. I mean, sometimes you're going to schedule a good team, and then they not be what you thought they was going to be. But that's different than scheduling a FCS team. Like Alabama's game. I didn't even watch it last week. I don't care about that. I just don't care about that. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Enjoy your show.
Greg, we always enjoy it when you call. Thank you, Greg in Russellville. Let's go to Steve in Birmingham. Steve, what's up?
Hey, y'all. So I would put Galloway for me right next to Cannell as far as the least appealing people to even listen to about football. But who is on? I haven't seen the ranking show. Who is on there with him?
We had our own Greg McElroy.
Yeah, Herb Street, Reese Davis. Is Booger on there?
Booger.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised that somebody like Booger didn't say, because he'd be the boldest. You should win an Oscar for being able to say that with a straight face. I mean.
Oh, well, you can hear Greg in the background as he's saying it. You can tell Greg's trying to interject and be like, wait, what are you saying?
I mean, yeah, that's being kind, just saying it that way. That's just so asinine. I can't even wrap my head around that. But that's sort of like, wasn't it last year Desmond Howard at the beginning of the year said A&M would win the national championship?
Oh, that's when he had A&M, Pitt, Baylor, and Michigan as his 4 playoff teams. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, those guys were – maybe they took too many shots to the head. I don't know at times. I wonder. But you guys have a good day.
Steve, you as well. Our day just got better with your phone call. We'll continue. 800-239-WJOX. Conrad, I say he does creepy things. He actually gives really good fantasy advice. Conrad gets in his corner and he tells you who to put in your lineup, maybe pick up off the waiver wire, and who to totally divorce from your team. Three-man front, we continue. Jocks 94.5. Three-man front, we continue here on this Wednesday. Fantasy football advice from Conrad coming up. If you need fantasy football advice, I have a first-round bye in our league, which is nice.
Congrats.
Thank you. It works out because 5 of my players have buys this week.
Yeah.
If you're looking to upgrade your fantasy roster or enhance your outdoor living area and landscape, how about our friends at Second Generation Masonry? That's a team for beautifying any area. I talk about them all the time, but if you're looking for maybe a fire pit, landscape steps, garden walls, stone patios, walkways, custom driveways, these are your folks. Alabama-based company, over 2 decades in business, commercial and residential projects. You can take a look at all of those completed there at the website, or some of those at least completed at the website. They're at secondgenerationmasonry.com. Get your free quote today. You're going to be glad you did. And make sure you tell them, as always, that Landrum from Jocks 94.5 sent you. It is time for fantasy advice, and he really tries hard at this. So please pay attention. This is Conrad's Fantasy Corner.
Touchdown! Conrad's Fantasy Corner.
All righty, back with another week in the world of fantasy football. I know for some people, like our league with our friends over there at Soho Social and Social Taco, our playoffs start this week. Landrum, of course, has that first round bye that he's so proud of. But I know a lot of people, playoffs coming up right around the corner. So really time to anchor down, and I hope your rosters are intact, because I'll be honest with you, it is kind of slim pickings right now if you need to bolster your roster. But let's get started, as we do each and every week here on the Fantasy Corner, with your top performers from last week. And a bit of a shocker here. This is definitely the most random one we've had all year. Taysom Hill, the quarterback slash tight end slash running back slash special teams player for the New Orleans Saints, had 41.5 points last week. Just an absolutely remarkable performance from Taysom Hill. But if you've been playing fantasy football for the last few years, you know that he's liable once or twice a year. This is going to happen, and he's absolutely going to go bonkers when no one expects it. So hats off to Taysom Hill and the Saints. Your second leading scorer, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Lions with 38.7, as the Lions absolutely killed the Jaguars over the weekend. And then Joe Mixon, 35.3 points on Monday Night Football, 3 touchdowns for him, a big performance from the Texans running back. All right, your teams to monitor for bye this week, there are a number of them, and this is going to affect a lot of you. So you have the Atlanta Falcons, the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets, the Cincinnati Bengals, the New Orleans Saints, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. All 6 of those teams on bye, and there are plenty of talented players on all of those rosters. So make sure you have your roster in check, because I know a lot of people are going to be hurting with the bye weeks. All right, injuries to monitor this week. So not as many serious injuries impacting key players, so that's a good sign for this week. But you have Sam Laporta, the tight end for the Detroit Lions. He is banged up. He is currently questionable. Again, I know, like you, Molly, I have him in one of my fantasy leagues, and I continue to play him. He continues to let me down because there's just so many weapons in Detroit.
Very on and off, very wishy-washy.
Yes, absolutely. And for a guy that was projected and drafted as the #1 tight end,
my team is named after him.
Yeah, I know. It's been a tough pill to swallow there, but hopefully he comes back and the Lions start feeding him the ball more here down the home stretch. You have Isaiah Pacheco, the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. He is back after being on injured reserve for much of the season. He's back at practice this week, expects to be a go against the Panthers this weekend, but keep in mind, Kareem Hunt has done a very good job in his absence, so probably wouldn't start Pacheco this week. Just kind of monitor it, see how they bring him along, how many touches he gets. But that is good news for Pacheco owners as well as the Kansas City Chiefs. Alexander Mattison, been a bit of an unsung hero for the Raiders this year, been their best running back. He is certainly questionable after injuring his ankle this past weekend. Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings, he is also questionable after getting a little dinged up. So if he's out, probably good news for Justin Jefferson owners, but keep an eye on him if you have Jordan Addison as a wide receiver 2 or flex play. For the 49ers, they have been so banged up this year. It's like every single week, some prominent member of their offense is hurt. And this week it is Brock Purdy and George Kittle. Both of them are questionable. Both of them got banged up. George Kittle's been dealing with an injury for a few weeks now, but Brock Purdy dealing with some shoulder soreness. So they're both questionable for this week. Mike Evans is back at practice for the Buccaneers. That's very good news. Expected to return this weekend, so just keep an eye on that. But Mike Evans, if you have him on your roster, good to see him back in action. I did mention the Jaguars. They are on a bye this week, but if we're looking ahead a little bit, Tank Bigsby is expected to come back next week after the bye, and he had kind of taken over that running back 1 spot from Travis Etienne. So definitely keep an eye on Tank Bigsby. Might be a player worth picking up this week while they're on bye. And then Trevor Lawrence looks like he's going to be back next week, replacing Mac Jones, who's been filling in the past couple of weeks. There was a belief that maybe Trevor Lawrence would be shut down for the rest of the year, but it seems like he's going to try to make a return there next week. And then a couple of tight ends, Jake Ferguson of the Cowboys and David Njoku of the Browns. Neither of them in the most favorable positions right now, but they are both listed as questionable for this week. All right, some waiver wire additions to consider. again, as I said, slim pickings this time of year. So if none of these, just shout must-have player to you, that's because, well, we're at that point of the year. But if you are scrambling, here are some options for you. At quarterback, I know this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people. No, not DeVito. We're not going there yet. We'll see how he does this week.
I thought it was going to be Tommy Cutlets.
We'll see how he does this week. But actually, Anthony Richardson, who had 28 points last week, coming back into the starting lineup again. This is ultimate boomer bust. If you are desperate for quarterback play, Anthony Richardson's available. I also really like Drake May. He has looked really good for the Patriots since taking over for them. Again, though, these are desperate situations we're talking about here. I mentioned Tank Bigsby, maybe worth a flyer on him. He'll be back next week for the Jaguars. Rashawn Johnson for the Bears. He is kind of the backup to DeAndre Swift, but he's been more of a factor in the offense the last few weeks. Double-digit fantasy points last week, so if you need help at running back, maybe a good option there. At the wide receiver position, you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who had yet another big game, another big touchdown catch for the Saints this past week, and he's had back-to-back really good weeks there if you need help at receiver. Christian Watson, also available in a lot of leagues. Again, the Packers are a bit hit or miss. They kind of rotate on who has a big week there out of the receiving core, but Christian Watson is their deep threat, so maybe worth a look there. At tight end, Will Dissly and Jonnu Smith both had massive games last week. Will Dissly filling in for the Chargers as their offense has started to really click here late in the season. So I like both of those guys. And then for your streaming defenses, the three I like this week, you have the Buccaneers going up against Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets, and the Giants. So I like the Buccaneers in that spot. You have the Commanders taking on the Cowboys, who are really, really bad right now, and then the Texans as they take on the Titans. So that is your fantasy football corner for the week. Sorry, it was on Wednesday. We had shuffle some things around yesterday, so hope you're still able to make your waiver wire additions. But that'll do it for our fantasy football update. When we come back, not Pat Ponders, Molly Marinates. It's on the way. You're listening to 3 Man Front on Jocks 94.5. 1:35 here on your Wednesday afternoon. Getting you set for the Paul Feinbaum Show coming up in about 25 minutes here on Jocks 94.5. Sure, he'll have plenty to say about the college football playoff rankings from last night. But we do have plenty of action for you to catch here over the coming days. Of course, tonight you have the big one there at the BJCC as Alabama basketball will play host to Illinois. I know a lot of people probably going out to catch that action tonight. But if you're not and you need a place to catch the game, why not head into Twin Peaks and Hoover? Because not only will they have plenty of TVs for you to catch all the action there, they also have their 29-degree man-sized drafts, a wonderful cocktail menu, plenty of craft beer options if maybe that's more your style, as well as a full-service kitchen, including their wonderful, all their chicken wings, including their 2 new wing sauces that you can try out, their flatbreads, the quesabria tacos, all of that available for you there at Twin Peaks and Hoover. Go check them out if you need a place to watch the game tonight. All right. It's not Pat Ponders. It's Molly Marinates coming your way.
I want to know what you're thinking. Tell me what's on your mind.
It's time for
Molly
Pat Ponders.
Marinates. Well, Molly Marinates.
girl.
Molly Marinates / Pat Ponders is brought to you each and every day by Courtesy GMC in Trussville. So visit them online at courtesybirmingham.com.
We do have a somewhat of a guest. He is a coworker and a friend, Damian Mitchell, otherwise known as the Hypel Disciple, probably a little bit down and out. That is UT Vols going to miss the playoff.
No, I've kept it kind of classy.
Well, he's a Georgia fan now. So.
No. Not going to do that. Leaning more Alabama this week.
Oh.
Just get away from me, please. No, we're not doing that again.
Can I not?
Molly, can we please hear your questions? I'd much rather hear that.
Well, my first question does involve the SEC.
Oh.
And this is also in honor of my bowl projections that I do each and every week. So we have 2 teams in the SEC right now that are 4-6. The Auburn Tigers and the Kentucky Wildcats. So I ask, who is more likely to finish 6-6 and go bowling?
Let me see. I'm going to be honest with
Kentucky plays at Texas and they get Louisville. Auburn's got A&M and Alabama.
It's Auburn. It's Auburn. Because you get this one at home in a potential look-ahead scenario for Texas. And then let's be honest, it's the Iron Bowl. I know it's in Bryant-Denny, but it's the Iron Bowl.
That's right.
I like those answers. Damien, was that your answer?
No, he doesn't like that answer.
Okay.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I'll go with Auburn as well.
You trust Auburn's offense more than you do Kentucky's?
Yes. Yeah. It's just the opponents. That's all.
That's tough.
Right. That's why I asked it.
It's tough.
That was a good question.
All right. Second question. Between now and the final college football playoff rankings, which team do you think will have the biggest drop-off and who will be the biggest riser?
Biggest drop-off will be... I'll say Miami.
Okay.
Because now I've totally eliminated them from the college football playoff. They're going to lose. They're not going to win the ACC. Biggest riser? Hell, I'll go SMU.
I like it. I was kind of leading an ACC route as well.
All right. I'm putting the glasses on. You can say what you want about what I'm about to say. My biggest faller is going to be Texas. I said at the beginning of the year, my bold take was that Texas A&M would beat Texas at the end of the year. I'm going to stick with that. And that will have Texas falling out of the college football playoff. And Alabama is going to go to the SEC championship and win. And they will be the number 2 team in the college football playoff.
That baby.
Do you not like that, Landrum?
You're a big bammer.
I pull for the story. So, yes, what a story that would be.
It would.
Go ahead.
I think the biggest faller is going to be BYU. And I think the biggest riser is going to be SMU as well.
I like it.
So do you think BYU still makes the playoff?
No.
All right. Next question. I have some fun questions coming up. Don't worry.
Oh.
So I saw an article.
It's a Taki the bed.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Anyway, I saw an article on The Athletic talking about the Bengals and their struggles and how they're 1-6 in one-score games this season. And I kind of thought to myself, I said, oh, that's so Nebraska. We almost always win games. One-score losses are our kryptonite.
Almost.
Win games.
Not in volleyball.
Oh, volleyball is a different story. I'm talking football here.
Dominating.
So anyway, that got me thinking, I'm going to give you 3 NFL teams, and I want you to give me your college football equivalent.
Ooh.
Okay, I
love this.
I like
the crossover game.
Let's get it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have 5. I added 2.
That's even better. Even better.
And if you have any
Christmas
bonus
came
ones,
early.
If you have any bonus ones, feel free to let me know. But the ones I wrote down first were the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Jets, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Washington Commanders, and the Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
Like I said, if you have any bonus ones, feel free to enlighten us.
Are we just doing this based on this season?
I would say so.
Specifically.
Just on this season?
I'll tell you right now, the Commanders are Indiana.
That makes it really tough for me. Okay. So I want to base it off I'm thinking about historic, and that's easier for me.
I got you.
Okay, that's fine. Again, this is your take. It's just when I saw the Bengals were 1-6 in one-score games, I said that is Nebraska in a nutshell.
Cowboys, and I know that they've had success recently, but Cowboys, absolutely University of Texas.
Okay.
I can see that.
Jets, once proud franchise, but it's been a minute. I will go USC.
Okay.
The Chiefs are... Man, the Chiefs would have been Clemson for me if Clemson had continued to do what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But now the Chiefs would be Georgia.
Okay.
I like that.
Commanders, I will go... They had controversy and a sleazy owner at one time. They got him out of there. So who would be that program that got sleaziness out of there? Oh, I know. University of Houston.
Of course.
I can't say
I like that.
I can't say I'm particularly surprised about that.
And then the Green Bay Packers, believe it or not, that is absolutely the Nebraska Cornhuskers because they show up to every game.
Right.
They've had tickets for years. They've been disappointed at times, but they show up
there's some
and they
history
yell,
there, too.
"Go Pack, go!"
And there's some history there too.
There's definitely history.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
I like
that's my
that.
thought.
Okay. I am
This is actually a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, this is tough. All right, I'm going to do mine. I'm doing mine based on this year. This is how I would compare the NFL teams to a college team this season.
And that was why I listed those certain NFL teams too.
Yes.
Right.
So mine will be a little different than Landrum's, but I do have one that's the same. So for the Cowboys this year, I know this is maybe a little bit of a reach, but I had Michigan in the sense that it's a huge brand that everyone got really excited for and just absolutely
solid.
Plummeted.
That's a good one.
When the season started. All
They
right.
did win a national title last year.
Yes, and the Cowboys have
Made
not
the
won a Super
playoffs.
Bowl
But
in a
no,
long time.
that's a good comp though.
Yeah.
I like it.
The Jets are tough because I'm trying to figure out like who's somebody that has a controversial quarterback that's still pretty good, but the team as a whole is not great. I
can think of one.
Damien.
I can think of one.
I went, and we're kind of splitting hairs here. I went LSU for the Jets right now because I do think Garrett Nussmeier is a pretty good quarterback. He didn't reach the expectations you had for him, just like Aaron Rodgers, but he has weapons around him, and for some reason, it continues to not work out in their favor. So I have the Jets as LSU. I have the Chiefs as Georgia. Again, another team, have won a bunch of championships recently, and every time that they start to struggle, everyone counts them out, and then they remind everyone how good they are. The Commanders, I have Indiana. Again, an upstart team. Had to bring in a whole new coaching staff, bring in a new quarterback. You got younger, you got more offensive minded.
That's a good comp too. I found it too easy not to include the sleaziness.
Yeah, no, perfectly fine. And then the Packers for me, I had Notre Dame, right? Rich tradition, great history.
Yeah.
Always in the mix. But more often than not, they end up coming up short when it really matters the most. So those are my comparisons.
I did a little bit of both. Kind of a couple teams I did more history, and the couple teams I did strictly this year. I actually agree with you 100% on the Commanders with Indiana. For the Cowboys, I have Miami.
Okay.
And it's kind of a
lot of flash.
Right.
A lot of talk.
But in most recent years, it's kind of, okay, y'all make a lot of noise, but it doesn't equate to anything.
Makes sense.
For the Jets, I have Michigan. And it's kind of similar to and mostly this season, it's all right. The Jets have had good moments. Like you've seen Mark Sanchez play an AFC title game
twice.
So it's not like their history is god awful. It's just the past couple seasons, it's a lot to be desired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, besides Michigan, winning the national championship. The Packers, I have Notre Dame, kind of similar to the reasons that, their support is their support. Yeah. They're going to rock with them. And for the Chiefs, I got Alabama.
Okay, yeah. It would be either Alabama or Georgia.
Yeah.
Kind of pick your own.
Chiefs ain't got 18.
You're right.
Those were all good answers, guys.
That was a great question.
Thank you. I'm serious.
Really
I got a
question.
notification from The Athletic about the Bengals, and I was like, Nebraska. Oh, that's a good question.
So who would the Titans be?
You don't want to know.
Yes, I do.
Tennessee.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. That's not even true. I just wanted to be mean. I'm sorry.
This season, who would they be? Mississippi State or Auburn?
Probably
Because our quarterback play is inconsistent, but the players around him are pretty good.
Are they?
We got Calvin Ridley.
Hey, we got more questions.
But say we have time for one more fun one.
Let's do it.
So last night, I was flipping back and forth between Maction and the semifinals for the Dancing with the Stars.
Landrum?
How did that go?
It was great.
Who's in the semis?
Danny Amendola.
Okay.
Oh, love him.
Still considered
Joey,
a star?
I mean, he's on the show.
Oh, the
Joey
Bachelor
from The
guy?
Bachelor.
Yeah.
A girl that was on Disney Channel. Alona, the girl that was on the rugby team, US Rugby, and then Steven Nedorosik, who was on the gymnastics team.
Oh, yeah.
Great finalists.
Yeah, glasses, pommel horse.
Yeah,
Yes,
very
great.
cool.
This is like one of the best finals we've
I
had.
definitely think Landrum watched this last night. Anyways.
It's not kind of locked in.
So anyways, I was thinking, if you had to pick 3 SEC head coaches to compete in Dancing with the Stars, who would you pick?
Lane Kiffin, because it'd be awkward as hell. Who do we think actually has I'd like to see Drinkwitz.
That's
I'll
what
go
I was
Kiffin,
thinking.
Drinkwitz.
I don't know why, but I could see Sark
Yeah.
doing the salsa.
I'm going to go Shane Beamer just because I feel like he'd be really enthusiastic
Yes.
and he would do
He'd
like
lock
some
in.
really weird breakdancing
lock
routine
in.
or something.
I was thinking Beamer too.
Yeah. So I'll go Kiffin, Drink, and Beamer.
And Kevin would do it because of his daughter. She would be all for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
No one else heard that.
Good. I'll throw a curveball out there because it seems like we're going younger guys, but how about maybe a little BK out there? We've seen him try to dance.
We've seen
Give
it.
him some formal dance training.
Okay.
Oh, I would
Ryan
love to-
Kelly
Would love to see that.
looks great in a suit. Sure, he'd perform well. And then,
If he gets mad.
hey, you know who I want.
Mark Stoops.
No.
Oh.
You freeze.
Yes, sir. Sam Pittman. Give me Sam Pittman.
That's a good one. Now, if it's a line dancing competition, my money's on Sam Pittman. I'll tell you right now. For square dancing, yeah. Give me Pittman.
Him doing a waltz.
That'd be good. I like that.
I would go Beamer, Drink, and for some reason, because he kind of gives off this very smooth look if he need to, Billy Napier.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Flip
can
his
see
hips
that.
a little bit, throw a little smile. You see him on the sidelines, got a little smirk to him, got a little moxie.
Very detail oriented.
I like it.
He wouldn't
No,
miss
y'all
a
with
step.
Caitlin DeBoer.
I mean,
He's not. Well, first of all, he would have to go collarless shirts the entire competition. Isn't there a night where they have to wear something formal and they have to wear the collar?
There's a few.
Oh yeah, he'd be done.
he just strikes me as the kind of guy that's probably pretty good at a lot of things he's done in life, and you would not really expect anything, and then you'd be at some gala, and he'd get up there with his wife, and you'd be like, "Have you been taking dance lessons?" He's like, "Oh, just kind of know how to do it." Like that's Caleb
Yeah.
DeBoer to me. He would just casually be like, "Yeah, I can dance." Oh, okay.
And that's Molly Marinade.
Nice job, Molly.
I'll say you guys did great.
Yeah, thank you.
Great question.
We're going to need that from you again tomorrow. Another edition tomorrow of Molly Marinades.
No pressure.
No, it's going to be tough to follow that one up. We'll continue here on 3 Man Front and Jocks 94.5.